the Committee of the Whole meeting for the Elgin City Council for July 13th, 2022 to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmembers Dixon?
Here.
Good?
Here.
Martinez? Here. Powell? Rauschenberger? Shaw?
Here.
Steffen?
Here.
Thorne?
Here.
Mayor Captain?
Here. Approval of the minutes of the previous meeting of June 22nd, 2022.
Move approval.
Second.
Moved and second for approval. Any corrections or additions? Hearing none, clerk please call the roll.
Councilmembers Dixon?
Yes.
Good?
Yes.
Martinez?
Yes.
Shaw?
Yes.
Steffen?
Yes.
Thorne?
Yes.
Mayor Captain?
Yes, motion's approved 7-0. Mr. Manager.
Good evening, Mayor, Council members. This evening we have two presentations, both involving the presence of our Chief Financial Officer, Deb Naraki. The first item up this evening, though, is a presentation from Sikich LLC regarding the city's audit of the city's audit and its presentation of the 2021 Annual Consolidated Financial Report. I know we're all familiar with Mr. Savio, and up until yesterday, it was his intention to be here present in person. But this funny virus that seems to be going around is keeping him reporting from home. But thank you still, Jim, for making the time to present your information to the City Council. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much. I apologize for not being able to be there in person. It took 2+ years, but I finally got COVID. It's not too bad though. It's just pretty much a mild case. So. I apologize again for not being able to be there.
I just followed the same path myself.
Yeah, I held out for as long as I could.
Okay, cool.
But yeah, I want to thank you also for your time tonight, and thank Rick, too, Deb, and Amy, and the entire staff for all of their help during the audit. They're very professional again this year, and were able to provide us with all the information we needed to answer our questions. We're hybrid mode again, so we are part on-site and part off-site. Again, this year seems to work out really well. Most of our clients have taken that approach now. So what I'm going to do is kind of give you, like I normally do, I'm going to give you a high-level look at the annual comprehensive financial report as well as the board communication to the City Council. And then answer any questions that you might have on these reports or any of the other reports we issued as well. So I'm going to share my screen and hopefully this will work. Can you guys see the report?
Yes.
Yes.
Excellent. All right. So I'm going to start on the table of contents and kind of go through the table of contents just to give you an idea of what's in the report, because it's 188 pages. So it is a lot of information here. I'm just going to give you a brief overview of what's in it by going through the table of contents. There's basically three main sections. There's the introductory section, the financial section, which is the majority of the report, and then the stats section at the very end. I just want to point out, we do not give an opinion on the introductory and statistical sections. I just want to point that out. But you'll see the introductory section there with the principal officials, org chart, the certificate of achievement for excellence in financial reporting, and then a letter of transmittal. Then after that, like I said, is the main section of the report. That's the financial section. The independent auditor's report is on pages 1 through 4. And we'll go through that because we implemented some new auditing standards. So it did change the format and a little bit of the content of the independent auditor's report. So we'll go through that in a little more detail. After that's management discussion and analysis that we'll talk about. And then the basic financial statements start on page 5 and go through page 8. These, the government-wide financial statements on those pages are basically the consolidated financial statements of the city. So it's going to include all the funds except for your fiduciary funds, so your police and fire pension, the retiree health, then your custodial funds. Those are presented on a long-term focus. So it has capital assets, it has long-term debt, similar to what you find in the corporate world for their financial statements. Now, after that follow the fund financial statements, and the governmental fund financial statements have a different focus. So they're short-term focused. They have no capital assets, no long-term debt, just focused on current spendable resources, similar to how you budget. So it's a different viewpoint with those financial statements. And then there's reconciliations on pages 11 and 13 that show you how we get from that short-term focus to the long-term focus. After the governmental fund financial statements, then are the proprietary fund financial statements. That's going to be your water fund, sewer fund, Gulf fund, as well as your internal service funds. And there's you can see a balance sheet, an income statement, and then a statement of cash flows. So this is the same long-term focus as those government-wide financial statements. No change there. They're just a little more detail, and it has a statement of cash flows as well. And then the fiduciary funds are not included, like I said, in those government-wide financial statements, but the balance sheet and income statement are on pages 19 and 20. Then after that, on pages 21 through 84, there's a whole heck of a lot of additional information that kind of supports those basic financial statements and should be read in conjunction with those. After that is the required supplementary information, or RSI, I might refer to it as. And this basically has a budget versus actual report for your general fund, and then additional information on your participation in your retirement funds, as well as the retiree health fund. After that, other than the combining and individual fund financial statements and schedules, so these are a lot more detailed schedules and a lot of budget versus actual schedules for all of your various funds. And then after that, like I said, is the stats section. You'll see in the stats section, there's it's a couple of different sections: financial trends, revenue capacity, debt capacity, demographic and economic information, and then operating information. So this has a lot more like non-financial data that's probably more interesting to the non-accountant. It also has a lot of good 10-year trend information that is pretty interesting as well. So that's what's in the report. I want to start, like I said, with the independent auditor's report. And you'll notice, if you can remember from the prior year, as soon as I get there, the format's a little bit different. And like I said, there's a little bit more different wording. You'll see the very first thing is we have the opinion paragraphs. They've been moved to the first part of the first page of the independent auditor's report. So that's not, it used to be on like the second page. So that opinion is in this second paragraph. And again, this year we issued an unmodified opinion, which is the highest level of assurance that we can provide to the city. After that is a section on our basis for our opinions. And then there's some responsibilities of management on page 1 and the top of page 2. And then auditor's responsibility starts here. And the very first paragraph is some new wording. So I just want to go through that real quick. The objective of our audit is to obtain reasonable assurance about whether the financial statements as a whole are free from material misstatement, whether due to fraud or error, and then to issue a report that includes those opinions, which is what this is. And it just goes on to explain that reasonable assurance is a high level of assurance, but it's not absolute assurance. So there's a chance that the audit would not detect a material misstatement. It also goes on to explain that trying to detect fraud is much harder than detecting an error, because it can include collusion, forgery, intentional omissions, etc. And then it defines misstatements that would be considered material if there's a substantial likelihood that individually or in the aggregate they would influence the judgment made by a reasonable user based on the financial statement. So if, for instance, the city didn't record $5,000 of accounts payable, that's not really going to change the opinion of the financial statement user. But if there's $30 million of long-term debt that wasn't recorded, that's going to change their opinion. So it just gives you an idea of it has to be materially misstated. And then on page 3, in the other matters section, it just explains what we do for required supplementary information in this first paragraph. Basically, we do some limited procedures, but not enough to give an opinion on. And then in the next section, the supplementary information, which is basically those combining an individual fund financial statements and schedules that I talked about previously. That's this basically says we give an in relation to opinion on those. So in relation to the basic financial statements, they're not materially misstated. And then the other information basically is the introductory and statistical sections. This is saying that we don't give an opinion, but we do read the information and make sure there's no material inconsistencies between that other information and the basic financial statements, or it's not otherwise materially misstated. So that's what it explains there. And then the last paragraph basically references our report that we issued that's included in the single audit report, our report on internal controls and tests of compliance. So that references that separate report. That's all on the independent auditor's report. Like I said, it is a lot of new information there, so I just want to point that out. What I point out every year is the management discussion and analysis, because it provides a great overview of the city's financial position and changes in financial position. It has some 2-year comparative data that you can't find elsewhere in the report. And it'll point out any significant changes or trends that are occurring. So that's, if you want to read one thing, like I always say, read that. You know, it's 188 pages. It's a long report. But if you want to read one thing, read the MD&A, because it does provide a good overview of the city's finances. Moving on then to pages 9 and 10. So these are the governmental fund financial statements. So these are the financial statements that have a short-term focus. So they're how you budget. I just want to point out in the first column is your general fund. The fund balance at the end of the year that was unrestricted and unassigned down at the very bottom here was about almost $83 million, which was an increase from the prior year amount of $69 million. Now this general fund column includes your general corporate fund and your riverboat fund. So there's a combining schedule that we'll look at in a minute that shows you the individual amounts for each of those funds. And then on page 12 is the statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance for your governmental funds. So this is basically your income statement. And you'll see about halfway down the page, about 2/3 of the way down the page, the excess of revenues over expenditures was about $16.4 million. Last year was about $189,000. Largely due to increased revenues, taxes, and intergovernmental, and then some reduced expenditures as well. And then you'll see down at the bottom, the net change in fund balance is the bottom line, like your net income. You'll see that was about $14.5 million. That's after other financing sources and uses, including transfers in and out. And then the last basic financial statement we'll take a look at is going to be the income statement for your proprietary funds. That's on page 16. This statement of revenues, expenses, and changes in net position. So this shows you basically your income statement for your water, sewer, the Gulf Fund, which is the non-major fund, and then the internal service funds. The three are combined into this column here. But I wanted to point out your operating income was positive for all three enterprise funds. So basically the charges for services to cover your operating expenses were sufficient to cover all of those expenses, including depreciation. That's what that shows right here. So I just want to point that out. I'm going to skip ahead now to page 87. I go through this every year too, but it's the additional information on your retirement plans. So the first schedules we'll take a look at are the schedule of employer contributions. So the first one is the Illinois Municipal Retirement Fund. You'll see this is top line is what the actuary says you should be contributing. You're contributing exactly what you should be, so there's no deficiency or excess. And then the contributions as a percentage of covered payroll kind of shows you what the pension burden is. So it takes those contributions and divides it by payroll. So you'll see that percentage has steadily been declining, and it was just a shade under 10% for 2021. That's in large part due to the great investment returns that IMRF has had over the last 2 or 3 years. And then there's similar information for police pension. You'll see basically that you're contributing essentially what you should. It's not exact. Some years are over and under, but essentially you're contributing what you should be. You'll see the big difference, though, the contribution as a percentage of covered payroll, although it came down in 2021, it's still about 53% of covered payroll. And then fire pensions, same way, a little bit higher, but again, you're contributing essentially what you should be contributing for fire pension. And then the last thing I'll look at in the RSI is the schedule of changes in the employer's net pension liability and related ratios. This basically shows you how well funded each of the plans is. So for the Illinois Municipal Retirement Fund, the top part, total pension liability, this is the liability that the actuary determines as of December 31st. and we're 1 year behind in order to have timely information like we always have been. So this is December 31st, 2020 is the latest information. But you'll see that's the total pension liability. The fiduciary net position is the asset you have set aside to pay for those liabilities, and then the difference between the two is a net pension liability or an asset. And you can see that for 2020, it was about a $15 million asset, so about a $20 million swing, largely due to these investment income numbers that you can see right here. Some great returns there. Change in assumptions also helped out in 2020, as well as some differences between expected and actual experience were also positive as well. So you can see up the very first line here, then this is your funded ratio. So you can see you went from about 97.5% to 107% funded. So great trend there for the Illinois Municipal Retirement Fund. And then same information for police pension. You can see the employer net pension liability actually went down about $12 million. Again, largely due to investment income being excellent over the last 3 years, and then also some positive changes in the differences between expected and actual experience. That reduced the net pension or the total pension liability by about $3.7 million. So you can see then again on 97, the very first percentage is the funded ratio. You'll see it went from 59% to almost 65%. And then similar results for fire pension. You'll see the net pension liability went from 83 million to about $70.8 million. And the funded ratio went from 58% to shade under 65% again. And then the last thing, I talked about the combining general fund balance sheet and income statement. That's on page 146 and 147. So if you want to see what the actual corporate fund did by itself, this is the combining statement. So the general fund, the corporate fund is here, the riverboat fund is here. If there's any eliminations, it's in this column, and then this total amount agrees to the balances that we looked at previously. So that's for the balance sheet and then the income statement as well. So that's all I have on the annual comprehensive financial report. I want to talk too about the board communication report. Maybe it's the front part here. And again, I'll look at the table of contents first. So on pages 2 through 4 are some required communication that we have to have with City Council every year. That's required by auditing standards. This year, again, nothing out of the ordinary there, pretty routine communication, didn't have any delays with the audit, no disagreements with management. We did implement GASB 98, which just changed the name of the annual financial report to the annual comprehensive financial report. Other than that, like I said, pretty routine communication there. Now, what we don't have here is we're required to list out any audit adjustments that we found. These are adjustments that were detected as part of the audit. We didn't have any of those, so great job by Deb and her team of having the financial statements and the trial balances fully adjusted. We didn't have any adjustments at all. So we also didn't have any what we call past adjusting journal entries. These are entries that are deemed to be immaterial, but above a certain floor, we have to communicate that to the council. So we didn't have any past adjustments either. So those would be listed out, like I said, after that required communication. And then finally, communication of deficiencies in internal control and other comments to management. That starts on page 5. And page 6, right here, basically, I'll point out there were no material weaknesses, no significant deficiencies, and we didn't have any new deficiencies this year, as you would expect with having no audit adjustments. And then Appendix A on page 7 just shows you the status of the prior year deficiency, and that's anticipated to be implemented, I think, pretty soon, actually, from what we've discussed. So maybe in 2022 or 2023 at the latest. So that's all I have on those 2 reports. We did issue a few other reports. We do issue a 1-page management letter that basically states in writing that there were no material weaknesses. I want to point that out. We did have a single audit because you expended more than $750,000 in federal funds. So we do have a single audit report. Then there's the usual 3 TIF reports that make sure you're in compliance with Public Act 85-1142. issued those. And then we have a consolidated year-end financial report. We give an in relation to opinion on that. That's required by GATA. So we do issue that report. So that's all I have on those reports, but I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Savio? Ms. Martinez?
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Savio, your firm has worked with the City of Elgin for a long time, and I thank you for that. But just to give some perspective, how many CFOs have you worked with in your time here now?
Three, actually.
Okay. And are there other municipalities that you have worked with that Sickage has managed their audits?
Yes.
Can you name some?
As far as
other municipalities in the area that you work with
just
in general?
yeah, I mean, probably, I think we have about 450 local government clients in
Oh, I didn't
total.
want you to name those, no.
Yeah, so in municipalities, I mean, it's probably a couple hundred, but I don't know the exact number.
In this
And
area,
total
right?
government entities is about 450. That's in Illinois, and that doesn't include Wisconsin or Missouri.
Okay. That experience and knowledge about the city of Elgin brings a lot of clarity and comprehension to the work that you do for us, and I appreciate you now. I appreciate how you review all information and the various departments and process that we use here. I thank you very much for that, because I think if we were to bring somebody new, it would be hard for them to detect something that's off like you would, because you've been working with us for a while. I know that every municipality is different. We have different fundings, but just been really happy having that working relationship with you. And you always make it simple for us to understand, so thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, I mean, having that institutional knowledge really does help out. I do have other clients that, we've serviced for a long time. So I personally feel like I do a better job when on my long-standing clients that I know. I know their processes, their transaction cycles, and I think it makes the process a lot higher quality, I think, for sure.
But what I was getting at is we're the sixth largest city in the state.
Yep.
And I was looking to see if there was anybody larger than us or smaller that you work with or your company works with, your firm. That's all.
Oh yeah, quite a few. City of Aurora, we've worked with for probably 30 some years. City of Naperville, for about 16, 17 years, I think. Plus Evanston, Waukegan, a lot of similar sized municipal clients that we've had.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anything else for Mr. Savio? Mr. Stefan?
Mr. Savio, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just had a quick question. Thank you for your presentation. Between this and my meeting with the city manager earlier today, most of my questions have been answered, but just one that still sticks out is on OPEB, and I know I'm wandering into a minefield here, but the reports, or the MDMA states that that liability is now known as an asset. Is that because of a reclassification, like a change in the rules, or did we just put so much money in there that we now have an asset rather than a liability, or can you explain why that changed?
Yeah, do you mean OPEB or
Yeah, OPEB.
IMRF?
The OPEB. OPEB,
Yeah.
yep.
Yeah, is OPEB, hold on a second.
And I'm referring, in front of me, I've got the MDMA open to page 5, so that's where the statement comes from.
Okay. Yeah, I was just going to pull up the funded ratio for the retiree health. Retiree health is funded about 80%, so there is a net OPEB liability of about $5 million, so it's not an actual asset. But I can go to, is MD&A 5, you said?
Yeah, it's on the 5th page, about 3/4 of the way down. in that first full paragraph. There's just a quick statement. It says the prior year net OPEB liability is now an OPEB asset.
And which paragraph?
The first full paragraph, there's a long, looks like a run over from the previous page, and then a break, and the new paragraph starts, and it's towards the bottom of that paragraph. 4 lines up from the bottom.
Got it.
And then the last line of the next paragraph, I think, repeats that kind of same position. IMRF becoming an OPEB asset and net pension asset as of December 31st, 2021. So my question is that because the rules change, or did we just invest in a way that made that change? Was there some other explanation?
Yeah, basically, the OPEB it's going to be a combination of, go back to this. It's basically going to be a combination of investment returns. Plus, I think that difference between expected and actual experience is probably what's causing it.
Okay, so better than expected
basically-
returns.
Actually, yeah, it was actually a change in assumptions plus difference between expected and actual experience. I don't know if you can see that, but that reduced the liability quite a bit. And then also investment returns as well. The last 3 years have been good too.
Okay. All right, thank you. I kind of thought that was the case, but it kind of stood out to me, so thanks for answering that.
Yeah, similar, like I said, similar situation happened with IMRF as well.
That was it, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, any further questions from Mr. Dixon?
Thank you. Mr. Savio, thank you again for the presentation. Just a couple of questions. After reviewing our financials, generally speaking, what do you think are some opportunities for improvement, if any exist, in your professional opinion?
I think at least from an accounting standpoint, I think the board communication kind of sums it up as far as the accounting side of it. Deb and her team are doing a fantastic job. To not have any audit adjustments at all is excellent. Usually we'll have a couple, 2 or 3, but it's a great job. And not having any, deficiencies or no new deficiencies at least. I think they're doing a fantastic job. So from an accounting internal control standpoint, the stuff that we look at, there's not a whole lot to improve.
Okay. All right. That's great. Keep up the great work, Deb. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Savio.
Okay, anything else?
You're welcome.
I have one question, Mr. Savio, and I'll kind of be a lead into Ms. Naraki's presentation. Is there a point when you've written a report on our finances for the previous year, and now we're looking in the rearview mirror, but how do we look into the future? And how do you, at some point, is there a question that comes up in your mind when you see turmoil in the economy? We're seeing inflation. We start to see a slowdown where you may issue a warning back to us and say there are some issues out here that you might want to try to address.
Yeah, I mean, I think as far as the audit goes, we're trying to, our main objective is to give an unmodified opinion on the financial statements to make sure that they're not materially misstated. But yeah, if there's issues that come up or potential issues in the future, yeah, we bring those to the attention of Deb and her team, usually in a planning meeting that we typically have in November. So we'll if there's any emerging topics or issues, we'll kind of tackle it at that point. One of the big things, obviously, the past couple of years has been the CARES money and the ARPA money.
Right.
So that's been a big issue that we've had to get our arms around the last couple of years, and we're going to continue to have to do for the next couple of years. And then also, as far as auditing standards go, the big one for next year is going to be GASB 87 related to leases and how you account for that. That's going to be a significant implementation. That's going to take time too, but that's something that we've also kind of been talking about, seems like forever, because I think the standard actually came out probably 4 or 5 years ago and then was delayed with COVID. They delayed the pronouncements for those. But yeah, that's typically what we'll do when we see issues emerging in the industry, is we'll tackle it as early and proactively as we can, usually in those planning meetings. But we keep in constant contact throughout the year as well too. So.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. A great presentation.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Manager.
Hey, you're welcome.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Manager. Item B is a mid-year budget update. Not unsurprisingly, the volatile economic conditions occurring with the start of the 2022 budget year are negatively impacting some operational expenses and capital initiatives. City's Chief Financial Officer, Deborah Naraki, is reporting this evening on the city's expenditures and revenues through the halfway mark, June 30th. Good evening, Deb.
Good evening. Okay. Good evening, Mayor and City Council. I wanted to take a few minutes tonight to update you on some of the ways the current inflationary pressure and related supply and labor shortages are impacting the city's budget and the effect the current economic conditions may have on the 2023 budget and financial plan that we'll be bringing to you in the fall. The budget process for 2023 is just getting underway. City departments began working on their operating budgets this month. They are currently evaluating all expenditure categories and preparing what we refer to as base budget addition requests. Base budget additions are increases in expenditures that are due to contractual increases, inflation, or labor demands. Base budget increases are for expenditure increases that maintain city services, no new programs. In past years, in many cases, expenditure increases have been absorbed by reductions in other categories, resulting in no overall increase to the budget. With the current inflationary increases we are experiencing, we don't expect to be able to do that for the 2023 budget. As we get into the budget meetings this fall, we'll be able to provide more information on 2023 budget impacts. Ahead of the formal budget process, we are able to provide examples of significant impacts on the 2022 budget. Each year, including 2022, the general fund budget includes a $400,000 contingency budget line item to provide funding for expenditures that come in over budget or are unexpected. We use this funding very judiciously, and all attempts are made to cover increases from other areas before we tap into the contingency funds. In most years, we use very little of this funding. However, with being at the halfway point in 2022, that contingency fund budget has already been exhausted. Okay. I first want to take a look at 3 expenditure categories that are going to significantly impact the city this year, and not surprising to anybody, as these 3 items are also impacting our personal budgets, our electricity costs, natural gas, and vehicle fuels. And these are citywide expenditures, not a particular fund. In 2022, we budgeted $3.8 million for these 3 expense categories. If we continue at the rate we are compared to 2021, we're projecting that we will spend $5.2 million, 36% or $1.4 million over budgeted levels. First, looking at electricity, we're expecting that to exceed the budget by about $700,000. The most significant expenditures out of the electricity budget are $1.5 million of that is from the utility fund, just to keep the water plant going. This, in addition to that, our street light budget is expected to be about $600,000, and then the remainder is for other electricity. Natural gas is expected to exceed budget by about $370,000. The 2022 budget planned for $850,000 in vehicle fuels. This is very consistent with prior years. However, this year, Public Works Superintendent Aaron Neal has indicated that before the end of the year, they're going to need another $300,000 for vehicle fuel. So in total, those three items are expected to be $1.4 million over budget. Moving on to this next slide, I just wanted to provide some examples of some other expenditures that we've already seen exceed budgeted expectations just in the first half of this year. And many of these items will continue to impact us as we go into preparing the 2023 budget. Looking at our building and maintenance department, they've done 3 projects that are indicated up there, and some HVAC work, the center mechanical room, and the wing park boiler, which have all come to council for approval already this year. Those 3 projects are exceeding budget by $189,000. Secondly, as you all are aware, the special events team has indicated that the Nightmare on Chicago Street will exceed the budget by $180,000. Moving down the list on a smaller scale, like the Public Works Department will be bringing forward their leaf processing and disposal contract at your next meeting. And this contract's going up 23%. And we expect to continue to see this in some of our other contracts. And items like this will, of course, impact the 2023 budget as well. Our recreation division, including golf, have seen several of their projects come in over budget, and they also have some labor issues. These items total about $433,000 in expenditures that are over budget. Most significantly, in the recreation department, they have had to increase starting wages to attract employees to fill slots in the before and after school programs and summer camps to keep those programs running. And the golf operations have also had a hard time finding labor, and they have had increases in temporary labor costs, as well as chemicals, fuel, and other commodities. The utility division is expecting chemical costs to exceed budget by $150,000. There was an item on the council agenda tonight, a bid, which I have been informed is being postponed due to a technical issue, but you will see in that memo that the increase in the chemical costs. The utility fund also projects other commodities will exceed budget by $100,000. So just these items that we have encountered so far through the first 6 months of the year, plus the utilities and vehicle fuels, we're projecting to be $2.4 million over budget. As you will recall, the 2022 adopted budget for the general fund includes $1,150,000 for discretionary funding. As of this point in the year, this funding has not been allocated to any specific initiatives. I would recommend that we utilize this funding as additional contingency for this year if the council approves of this allocation.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we
Are you ready to have a motion, or would you like to continue?
Continue.
Continue.
Is that okay?
Okay, yes.
Okay. All right. Okay. Moving on to the next slide. These are some other expenditures that I want to make you aware of that are affecting 2022 and will continue to affect us in the coming years. And we'll have more information as we come back in the fall again. But the first two items, the fire engine and the 3 ambulances, are on the committee of the whole agenda for approval tonight. Each year we budget, I'll start with fire engine. Okay, the fire engine was planned in the 3-year plan to be purchased in 2024. Chief Sagan is going ahead and ordering this engine now so that we can get it in 2024. We're basically getting in line to acquire this apparatus. The price for this engine is going to be $714,000. When Chief Sagan got a price quote in 2021 for this equipment, it was $621,000. So you can see that it's increased over $90,000 since last year. And then this will be received in 2024. Moving on to the ambulances, each year we budget for 1 ambulance to be purchased. Again, due to the delays in acquiring these vehicles, Chief Sagan wants to go ahead and order them now and get in line. And these 3 ambulances will cover our 2023, 24, and 25 purchases. However, 2 of the ambulances won't be received until 24, and then 1 in 25. And while this increase in the price of $40,000 over 3 ambulances is not hugely significant, when we order these ambulances, this does not lock the price. So we're going to be subject to price increases by the time we actually receive this equipment. I think I neglected to mention, but the fire engine price is locked, but the ambulances are not. And the next category of expenditure I wanted to talk about was is street resurfacing. This year we still have $600,000 in construction costs that has not yet been awarded. After discussions with Mike Pubens, Public Works Director, he is expecting that asphalt prices will increase primarily due to increases in oil prices. We don't have any significant bid data at this time because we've only bid 1 project so far this year. But preliminary analysis points to a 10 to 15% increase in overall construction project costs. Another consideration as far as street resurfacing goes is that asphalt is produced on a futures market in advance of the construction year. So at this point, we're not sure if we'll see the increases in this year's construction projects or if that will be next year. Another issue that we're going to encounter with our street projects this year is that the quarry operators union went on strike on June 7th, 2022. And this might limit the contractor's ability to get asphalt. We have 2 construction projects going out to bid soon, which could be delayed depending on how long the strike lasts. Given these 2 issues, it's too early to know how we should proceed with this year's projects. When we have more certainty, we can come back to the council with any changes. But we do know, looking forward, we're going to have some pretty significant cost increases. One last issue that I wanted to point out is in our parks maintenance, seasonal staffing. And in a discussion with Greg Hulke, the recreation superintendent, the land management operations need 29 seasonal positions each year, and the budget provides for those positions. Currently, only about 14 of those positions are filled. and pay level is a contributing factor. Job seekers can obtain positions which are a lot less strenuous and offer higher wages at other local businesses. The staffing shortage is affecting the maintenance crew's ability to keep up the maintenance of the parks. And this is something we're going to have to evaluate the pay plan for this staffing for the 2023 budget. So more to come on that in the fall. While we have had significant concerns regarding 2022 expenditures and the ongoing effect on next year's budget, I don't want to project a totally negative picture for 2022. Our revenues are strong and performing well when compared to budgeted expectations. Just want to look at some of our major revenue streams and how they're performing compared to last year and compared to this year's budget. As you know, there's a lag in the receipt of many of our revenue streams. So on the slide, I've reported how many months of revenue we have received in those categories, ranging from 3 to 6. Starting out with sales tax, in 2021, we received $35.9 million in sales tax. This year's sales tax is budgeted at $34.5 million, about 4% less. The reason for this is conservative budgeting, and also we received significant sales tax dollars later in the year in 21 that we didn't expect. So far, year to date, for sales tax for 22, we've received $11.5 million compared to $10.4 million last year, about a 10% increase. And I think this gives us some comfort level that if sales tax receipts do start to decrease, we're in a position to still achieve our budget for this year. Moving on to property tax. As you know, our property tax levy for the general fund for 21 and 22 was flat at $27.8 million. So far this year through June, we've collected $14.6 million compared to $14.3 last year, so about 2% increase, which can give us a comfort level that, you know, we shouldn't probably experience a greater loss in collection than we did last year, and should be able to meet that budget. Moving on to income tax. Last year we received $14.3 million, and we set the budget at $13.3 million. This is also comparable to the sales tax category. We budget conservatively, but we also received a large influx of revenue later in the year that was unexpected. So far this year, we received $10.9 million in income tax revenue compared to $7 million for the same time period last year. And while that 54% increase looks a little shocking, what you have to know about income tax receipts is they're not received evenly throughout the year. Some months the distributions are high and sometimes they're low, and that there's no consistent pattern from year to year either. So, but the state shared revenue estimates are projecting that we would receive 5% more than we received in 2021, which would be $15 million and would still significantly exceed our budget for the year. Moving on to the natural gas tax, we budgeted $2 million for that revenue stream, and we're already at $1.9 million. This is due to the increase in gas costs that we're all experiencing, and that tax is 5% on gross receipts, so as the price goes up, the tax goes up. The electricity tax, the receipts so far this year are in line with last year, And this is a use tax, so it's not affected by the increases in prices. Local motor fuel is also in line with last year and on target to reach budgeted levels. Also a use tax and not affected by the increase in the gas prices. And lastly, the riverboat gaming and admissions tax. Last year, the receipts were just shy of $8 million, and we budgeted $8.9 million because 2021 was still experiencing some of the impacts of the pandemic and the restrictions. So far this year, through May, the riverboat receipts are $3.6 million compared to $2.8 for the first 5 months of 2021. And I think this suggests that we're well on target to meet our budget for that revenue stream and potentially exceed it. So, at the halfway point of the year, if revenue patterns continue and the discretionary funding is freed up to balance expenditures, I believe we can balance our revenue and expenditures in comparison to our budget. We will continue to carefully monitor revenue and expenditures, and should things change, we will evaluate planned initiatives.
Okay, questions from Ms. Naraki? Mr. Thorne.
Thank you for the presentation, and I especially noted that the surplus, which we all had something to do with talking about early on in the year, is currently at 1.1. With all of the additional expenditures, as we all certainly understand, I would actually like to make a motion, Mr. Mayor, that surplus be moved to be utilized to help balance the budget so that we are not in the red as we begin next year.
Second.
Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Mr. Dixon.
All right, I just want to make sure that we're being clear here, that I'm understanding what this motion is. Thank you, Deb, for your presentation. So essentially what you're saying, and correct me if I'm wrong here, we had a projection. We're falling short at the beginning of your presentation, but we're making it up in ways on the back end, at least projected to, and that we're actually going to end up maybe in a better, without a deficit. So is this, with this 1.1 million, proposed move, is that necessary, or do you think that the projected budget with the tax revenues that you're talking about will fill that gap?
I would recommend moving that discretionary funding to the contingency fund to help us offset the expenditures that are over budget. I think our expenditures are going to be more over budget than that discretionary funding, but our revenues at this point in time are strong, and I think that if things continue as they have so far this year, they should offset any additional expenditures that the discretionary funding would not cover.
Right, and then we can potentially move it back once we get to the end of the year, or would that just be a final deal? It'll just be done?
Yeah, it would just be moved.
It would just be moved. Okay. All right. And so what was our original contingency amount again?
$400,000.
And that $2.4 million that we're projected to be in the red on, is that $2.4 million minus the $400,000, or is that with?
A couple of the things that were on that list came out of the contingency fund, but there's been some other items that came out of the contingency dollars.
Okay. Okay. That's all my questions for now. Thank you.
Okay.
Anything else? Mr. Steffen.
I was going to kind of caution against locking the reserves in, but Deb's kind of addressed some of my concerns that, you know, we can put it in this fund, and then if it's not needed, it can go other places. Just because it's early in the year, I appreciate the update and I thank you. But you've got it up on the screen right now. It looks like revenues are coming in pretty healthy. Of course, a recession or continued inflation could certainly change that. But just looking at several of these, I mean, year to date, totaling up the two columns on the right side, year to date 2021, year to date 2022, we're currently about $4.8 million ahead of where we were last year. Granted, we've budgeted some increases already if you look over the 2022 budget, but some of those we budgeted decreases, and we're still way ahead. So the point is, it's early in the year. We've got lots of the budget year left to live through and have to experience. But with your additional comments that putting that $1.1 million into that fund and then possibly being able to take it out if it's not needed, you know, I'm okay with that. But I just wanted to point out that there's lots of variables here, and projections show that we may not be as bad off as we think. So those are the comments I wanted to make.
Anything else? Just a couple comments from me, and I agree with Mr. Steffen. There's a lot of variables that we're only halfway through the year, and there's a long ways to go. Just 2 points. I was looking at the infrastructure bill coming from the federal government. Was set at $1.9 trillion, and they estimate that they're only going to get about 2/3 of the projects done. When I look at this, there's only a couple ways to balance the budget. Either you have to put more money into the projects that we plan to do, or you do less projects. There is no third ground. There's 2 grounds to step on. We took out a bond for $5 million for Parks and Recreation for new playgrounds. I could talk to Mr. Hulke, but I'm going to tell you we probably won't get those playgrounds. The $5 million is fixed, and there's no money we can add to that, but the projects are going to keep growing and growing unless he can lock in those costs. So we're probably going to be coming back to look at this as time goes on over the course of the year. And again, we depend on the state, we depend on the economy of the state to help us with some of the things that we do. We look at the motor fuel tax and how that pays us. There's already been discussions about that at the state level or the federal level, if they cut the motor fuel tax, that we'll pay a price 2 or 3 years down the road because we won't be able to finish our streets. That's what we use. So these are things that are dynamics that we're going to have to look at and just exercise caution here. I'll agree with transferring the funds at this time. That's what reserve funds are for as well. When we hit rough patches, that we go back and look at doing things that we need to do. And the last thing you want to do in a time when people are having problems is to raise taxes. So if we can do this without raising taxes on people, that would be our goal towards the end of the year. So we have a motion. Anything else? Okay, well, you want to repeat the motion, or Ms. Dewis? Go ahead, Mr. Thorne.
Certainly. Stab at it. I would like, my motion is that we transfer the 1.1 surplus funds to the allowance of the discretionary funds so that it can be used as needed as the budget continues.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Okay, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Dixon,
Yes.
Good,
Yes.
Martinez,
Yes.
Shaw,
Yes.
Steffen,
Yes.
Thorne,
Yes.
Mayor Captain.
Yes, motion's approved 7-0. Anything else for Ms. Naraki, or Ms. Naraki, would you like to add anything?
Thank you.
Any further questions for Ms. Naraki from the
No,
council?
thank you.
Okay, thank you. At this time, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn the committee of the whole, and we'll reconvene at 7:10 with the regular council meeting.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Dixon,
Yes.
Good,
Yes.
Martinez,
Yes.
Shaw,
Yes.
Steffen,
Yes.
Thorne,
Yes.
Mayor Captain.
Yes, we are adjourned. We'll reconvene at the regular council meeting at 7:10. We won't say anything, Rose. We'll call the regular meeting for the Elgin City Council for July 13th, 2022 to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmembers Dixon,
Here.
Good,
Here.
Martinez,
Here.
Powell, Rauschenberger, Shaw,
Here.
Steffen,
Here.
Thorne,
Here.
Mayor Captain.
Here. Approval of the minutes of the previous meeting of June 22nd, 2022.
So moved.
Second?
Moved and second for approval. Any corrections or additions? Hearing none, clerk please call the roll.
Councilmembers Dixon,
Yes.
Good,
Yes.
Martinez,
Yes.
Shaw,
Yes.
Steffen,
Yes.
Thorne,
Yes.
Mayor Captain.
Yes, motion's approved 7-0. We have two communications this evening. Would Mike Lee join me at the podium? Whereas the Kane County Teachers Credit Union is a member-owned, not-for-profit financial cooperative that focuses on helping people that live and work in the Fox Valley communities to live better lives financially. And whereas KCT is one of the oldest credit unions in the state of Illinois and was chartered on March 25th of 1937 as Northern Kane County Teachers Credit Union to serve teachers of Kane County through the tireless efforts of Miss Martha Black, a teacher in the then Elgin Public School District, and Mr. Earl McCoy, then County Superintendent of Schools. And whereas the credit union changed its name to the Kane County Teachers Credit Union in 1952 and in 1998 changed to a community charter serving anyone who lives or works in the counties of Kane, DeKalb, DuPage, Grundy, Kendall, McHenry, and Cook County west of Route 83. And whereas the credit union was embraced and is dedicated to living the credit union philosophy of people helping people through the pooling of resources, ethical and financial leadership for the good of the cooperative, empowering members to improve their financial futures, and uniting to help those in need. And whereas the Credit Union Board of Directors in October 2021 reaffirmed the credit union's mission in a board resolution that the credit union exists to help members from all social and economic classes to build financial well-being as well as work together to strengthen the communities we serve, increasing quality of life for all. This is specifically achieved with financial wellness education and programs serving low-income and other underserved community members and those who historically disadvantaged populations to increase financial well-being. This allows the KCT Credit Union to live up to our motto of building stronger communities together. Now therefore, I, David Captain, Mayor of the City of Elgin, Illinois, do hereby recognize, honor, and commend Kane County Teachers Credit Union on the milestone occasion of its 85th anniversary for continually serving the Fox Valley communities by prioritizing wellness, financial wellness education, and products developed to help everyone achieve their financial goals. Congratulations. I appreciate it. Say a few words?
I just want to thank the city and the council. One of the things we realize, it's a community that helps advance people's lives. And without the teamwork of many components of that, be the school districts we work with, the universities, the different businesses, we couldn't do what we do. So bottom line, it's just an honor to serve, and we're privileged to have the support of the people in the community, because without our membership, we don't have a credit union. And many of you are actually members of the credit union. I just want to personally thank everyone again today. Thank you so much for supporting KCT for 85 years. Thank you so much.
Santiago Cervantes. whereas parks and recreation programs are an essential, adaptable, and integral part of communities throughout this country, including Elgin, and whereas parks and recreation promote health, wellness, and time spent in nature, improving both physical and mental health, increasing cognitive performance and well-being, and whereas parks and recreation encourages physical activities by providing space for adults and children to enjoy popular sports, hiking trails, swimming pools, and many other activities designed to promote active lifestyles. And whereas parks and recreation programs and education activities such as providing healthy and nutritious meals, out-of-school programming, youth sports, and environmental education are critical to childhood development. And whereas our 75 Elgin parks and natural recreation areas are fundamental to the environment, resilient in the face of natural disaster and climate change, improve water quality, protect groundwater, prevent flooding, improve the quality of the air we breathe, provide vegetative buffers to development, and produce habitat for wildlife. And whereas our parks and natural recreation areas ensure the ecological beauty of our community, increases a community's economic prosperity through increased property values, expansion of the local tax base, increased tourism attraction and retention of businesses, reduction of crime levels, and whereas the U.S. House of Representatives has designated July as Parks and Recreation Month, now therefore I, David Captain, Mayor of the City of Elgin, do hereby declare the month of July as Parks and Recreation Month in the City of Elgin.
Thank you, Mayor, City Council. I am Santiago Cervantes. I'm the fitness supervisor for the Elgin Parks and Recreation Department. Our department is excited to celebrate July as National Parks and Recreation Month. This year's theme is We Rise Up for Parks and Recreation. The year 2020 has a different feel for the Parks and Recreation, as we celebrate 20 years of the Center of Elgin being the heart of the community. Our team worked hard to offer a variety of events for families of the community in celebration of reaching this milestone. Residents of Elgin and visitors can enjoy and participate in Fitness in the Park, music every Tuesday night at our Wing Park concert series, Festival Park movie series, and as always, go for a swim at Wing Park Aquatic Center, play a round of golf at one of our 3 courses, walk the trails or fish at Hawthorne Hill Nature Center, or simply just visit our beautiful parks. Share your adventures with us and use the hashtag Heart of the Community on your social media. Have fun creating your own story, and we look forward to seeing you at our events, parks, and programs. Thank you.
Okay, we have a number of people that signed up for public comments, but as is the policy, they are related to petitions before the City Council, and your chance to speak will be at the time those petitions are called. Brings us to bids. First item is bid number 21-019, police emergency warning lights.
Mayor, make the motion to award the bid to Ultra Strobe Communications Incorporated in the amount of $121,747.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Dixon,
Yes.
Good,
Yes.
Martinez,
Yes.
Shaw,
Yes.
Stefan,
Yes.
Thorne,
Yes.
Mayor Captain.
Yes, the motion's approved 7-0. Item 2, the staff has requested be pulled from the agenda.
Should we table it or just skip it?
Table it, I'm sorry. That's, yeah,
just table.
pulled table. Thank you,
Okay.
council
I'll
member.
move
Thank
the
you, Mayor.
table.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Second.
Sorry, Mayor.
It's been moved and seconded to table. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Dixon,
Yes.
Good,
Yes.
Martinez,
Yes.
Shaw,
Yes.
Stefan,
Yes.
Thorne,
Yes.
Mayor Captain.
Yes, motion's approved 7-0. Item 3 is bid number 22-032, Gifford Road Water Main Improvements.
Mayor, make the motion to award the bid to Martin Construction in the amount of $2,337,451.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Dixon,
Yes.
Good,
Yes.
Martinez,
Yes.
Shaw,
Yes.
Stefan?
Yes.
Thorne?
Yes.
Mayor Captain.
Yes, motion's approved 7-0. Item 4 is the demolition of 600 South State and 515 Sportsway.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make the motion that we award this bid to McDonough Demolition, Inc. in the amount of $601,500.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Mr. Shaw.
Just want to point out, we did receive one bid that was much less, about $150,000 less. Unfortunately, though, they did not submit paperwork for prevailing wage. So when we talk about the Illinois tax, this is one of those areas that I keep going back to. Prevailing wage is different in Elgin than it is in Chicago, yet the rates are the same. So when we have issues about spending dollars and it costs so much to do projects, I want the residents need to know why. And so on one project that we're going to now pay $600,000, $600,000 for, we could have paid $428,000 for. That's a big gap. If you were doing that yourself, you would not be happy about that. And so that type of feedback needs to make it to Springfield. That's all.
Anything else? Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Dixon?
Yes.
Good?
Yes.
Martinez?
Yes.
Shaw?
Yes.
Stefan?
Yes.
Thorne?
Yes.
Mayor Captain.
Yes, motion's approved 7-0. Item 5 is the job order contract with F.H. Passion for replacement of the Hemmons roof and pavers and City Hall pavers.
Move for approval?
Second.
Moved and second for approval. Any discussion? Hearing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Dixon?
Yes.
Good?
Yes.
Martinez?
Yes.
Shaw?
Yes.
Stefan?
Yes.
Thorne?
Yes.
Mayor Captain.
Yes, motion's approved 7-0. Item 6 is the Sourcewell Purchasing Cooperative Contract for the purchase of security cameras.
Move for approval.
Second.
Moved and second for approval. Any discussion? Hearing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Dixon?
Yes.
Good?
Yes.
Martinez?
Yes.
Shaw?
Yes.
Stefan?
Yes.
Thorne?
Yes.
Mayor Captain.
Yes, motion's approved 7-0. Item 7 is Sourcewell Purchasing Cooperative Contract for the purchase of 2 picnic shelter kits.
Move approval.
Second.
Moved and seconded for approval. Any discussion? Ms. Martinez.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to say thank you for bringing this up because there's 2 shelters in each park, Lords and Ween Park, and they're always sold out, and it's such a moneymaker. I'm glad that somebody finally decide to look into this and bring an extra picnic shelter for each park, which is going to bring more revenue to Elgin. So I just want to say thank you for bringing this up, Rich Holke and Greg Holke. So thank you.
Okay, anything else? Okay, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Dixon?
Yes.
Good?
Yes.
Martinez?
Yes.
Shaw?
Yes.
Stefan?
Yes.
Thorne?
Yes.
Mayor Captain.
Yes, motion's approved 7-0. Item 8 is a suburban purchase cooperative contract for the replacement purchase of 12 patrol and administrative vehicles for the Elgin Police Department.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and second for approval. Any discussion? Hearing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Dixon?
Yes.
Good?
Yes.
Martinez?
Yes.
Shaw?
Yes.
Stefan?
Yes.
Thorne?
Yes.
Mayor Captain.
Yes, motion's approved 7-0. That brings us to other business. The first item is consideration of petition 13-22, 340 Renner Drive, Unit D, conditional use to establish a sweets and nuts snack food manufacturing facility within an existing multi-tenant building. Mr. Malat.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This property is located at the southwest corner of South Street and Renner Drive. This is US Route 20. This is South Street. This is Renner. ComEd has a service facility and equipment yard here. R&L Carriers is here. XPO Logistics is here. And this is the northern edge of the Elgin Community College campus. Janaki Foods requests permission to establish a food manufacturing facility within the vacant 30,000 square foot Unit D at 340 Renner Drive. The building is a 120,000 square foot multi-tenant light industrial building. The company is currently located in Elk Grove Village and would move its operations to Elgin. Janaki manufactures Indian snacks, sweets, and pancake-type batter mix. The process does not generate any fumes or emissions. All necessary exhaust systems will be installed in compliance with the building code. Hours of operation will be 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday with 15 employees. The other tenants in the building are all sister companies owned by the same owner of Janaki Foods, Nandavan Partners. The applicant is present. Should you have any questions, staff of the Planning and Zoning Commission recommend approval, subject to conditions outlined within your packet.
Move for approval.
Second.
It's been moved and second for approval, subject to conditions. Any discussion? Questions for Mr. Malat or the developer? Ms. Martinez?
I don't have any questions. I just have a comment, and I'd like to say welcome to Elgin, and thank you for choosing Elgin.
Okay. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Dixon,
Yes.
Good,
Yes.
Martinez,
Yes.
Shaw,
Yes.
Stefan,
Yes.
Thorne,
Yes.
Mayor Captain.
Yes, the motion's approved 7-0. Congratulations. Item 2 is consideration of petition 17-22, 1550 North Randall Road, a map amendment to plan development to install a third wall graphic on a medical office building. Mr. Malat.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This property is located on the west side of Randall Road between Alp Lane and Holmes Road, opposite of Fox Lane. Randall is here, this is Fox Lane. San Felipe is here, and this is Advocate Sherman Hospital. Brilliance Subaru is located toward the bottom of the screen, and this is a distribution facility for Discount Tire. Ortho Illinois provides orthopedic and rheumatology medical care, and their 49,000 square foot building is nearly complete. The facility will provide walk-in injury care, physical and occupational therapy, x-ray, MRI, and infusion services under one roof. Ortho Illinois requests approval of 3 wall graphics, whereas the zoning ordinance allows 2. In exchange for the 1 additional wall sign, Ortho Illinois would keep the total size of the 3 wall signs at just under 300 square feet, which is significantly less than the 960 square feet that would otherwise be permitted for 2 wall signs. The building entrance faces Randall Road, and the main wall sign facing east would identify the medical building and the walk-in injury service. A wall sign on the north and south sides of the vertical blade would project above the building, providing visibility to motorists traveling along Randall. The applicant is available should you have any questions. Staff and the Planning and Zoning Commission recommend approval, subject to conditions outlined within your packet.
Move approval.
Second.
It's been moved and second for approval. We had Tim and Linda Anderson had signed up to speak if they chose to. No need to? Okay. Okay. Any questions for the developer or for Mr. Malat from the council? Hearing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Dixon,
Yes.
Good,
Yes.
Martinez,
Yes.
Shaw,
Yes.
Stefan,
Yes.
Thorne,
Yes.
Mayor Captain.
Yes, motion's approved 7-0. Brings us to item 3 is consideration of petition 20-22, 335 Locust Street, a map amendment to a plan development to construct a building addition for a new performing arts center at St. Edward's Central Catholic High School. Mr. Malat.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This property is located at the intersection of Locust Street and Elm Street. This is State Street on the right-hand side of your screen. Here is Locust, and this is Elm. This building here to the left provides some context, is the Housing Authority of Elgin. St. Edward's Central Catholic High School requests approval of a 9,400 square foot building addition at the southwest corner of the school for a performing arts center. St. Edward currently uses its gymnasium for performing arts, but the physical characteristics and acoustics of this space are inadequate for quality music and drama performances. The new Performing Arts Center will allow the high school to keep pace with the demands of modern education. The theater will include fixed seating for 280 persons, its own entrance, lobby, toilet rooms, dressing rooms, and associated mechanical and electrical support spaces. The architecture of the Performing Arts Center blends well with the existing school, including a well-designed application of brick, cast stone, and metal accents. The proposal does not expand enrollment, and it does not increase the parking demand. Performing arts events are already taking place at the school, and many of the same students involved in the arts are also involved in athletics. St. Edward has committed to not schedule events in the theater at the same time as athletic events in either the gymnasium or at the football field. The applicant is present. Should you have any questions, staff and the Planning and Zoning Commission recommend approval, subject to conditions outlined within your packet.
Move for approval.
Second.
Moved and second for approval. Any discussion? Hearing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Dixon,
Yes.
Good,
Yes.
Martinez,
Yes.
Shaw,
Yes.
Stefan,
Yes.
Thorne,
Yes.
Mayor Captain.
Yes, motion's approved 7-0. congratulations. We were fortunate to have a tour and talk to them when they were planning this, and they've done their due diligence and talked to the neighbors, and this is going to be a great project and an asset to St. Edward's High School. Thank you very much. Item 4 is consideration of petition 11-21, 2401 Weld Road, map amendment to plan development to construct a new self-storage facility. Mr. Malat.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This property is located north of Hobby Lobby between Weld Road and Weldwood Road. This is US Route 20. This is Randall Road. Here is Weld Road, and this is Weldwood Road. Marcus Elgin Cinema is here, Applebee's restaurant here. This is the Otter Creek Shopping Center, which includes Hobby Lobby, Office Max, Big Lots, Otter Creek Wine and Spirits, Burlington, and a post office, among others. This is the Weldwood Oaks subdivision located in unincorporated Kane County. And this is the Elgin Country Club, the building and driving range for which is in Elgin. The applicant requests approval of a new self-storage facility for U-Store-It on the vacant property. U-Store-It is a national provider of self-storage units with facilities in California, Indiana, and Illinois. Zoning for the 7-acre property was approved in 2008 to allow 3 office buildings north of Hobby Lobby and 5 single-family homes behind Hobby Lobby. Each of the 5 homes would have a driveway accessing Weldwood Drive. The 2008 office and single-family home project was never started. At the September 2021 public hearing, staff advised the Planning and Zoning Commission that it found the self-storage facility planning to be a less intensive alternative to what was approved in 2008, as well as an appropriate transition between the adjacent high-volume, big-box retail and single-family homes. The new plan removed the 5 single-family homes and left that land as landscaped open space. No traffic would access Weldwood Drive, and the self-storage facility would generate more than 240 fewer total trips per weekday onto Weld Road than the office buildings and single-family homes. That's more than 1,200 fewer trips every Monday through Friday. Finally, the self-storage buildings would sit significantly lower on the land than the 2008 office buildings. The building outlines in red on your screen are the 2008 office buildings. Nonetheless, the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended to deny the applications. They opined that the proposed self-storage facility was not compatible with the surrounding residential area, does not adequately address stormwater runoff, and does not comply with a future land use map of the 2018 comprehensive plan. The applicant has preserved a majority of the trees along Weldwood Drive and the west property line to buffer the county residences. And following the Planning and Zoning Commission recommendation, the applicant further extended the berm south behind Hobby Lobby. The berm would be located behind the existing preserved trees. The berm would vary in height between 5 feet and 12 feet high. 19 additional evergreen trees would be installed on top of the berm behind Hobby Lobby, and the number of evergreen trees behind the west side of the self-storage buildings would be increased from 59 to 72 trees. The applicant has also agreed to increase the height of those trees at installation from 6 feet to 8 feet high. The applicant submitted a preliminary site grading plan to show that the proposed development will not impede the existing flow of stormwater across the property, and the proposal will meet all requirements of the Kane County Stormwater Ordinance. And while the future land use map does designate a portion of the subject property as parks and open space, that designation is simply not appropriate. That portion of the property has been zoned office for development for more than 14 years, and the 2011 Parks and Recreation Master Plan has no calls for parks or open space anywhere near this property. The front facades of the self-storage facility will be brick and stone, while the remaining interior facades would be primarily metal wall panels. Non-masonry facades would not be visible from the public way. The facility would be secured with a 6-foot-high solid vinyl fence. The applicant would reconstruct Weld Road such that its curb and gutter profile matches that of Weld Road along Hobby Lobby, including constructing a sidewalk along the west side of Weld Road. The applicant is present should you have any questions. Staff recommends approval subject to conditions outlined within your packet.
Move for approval.
Second.
It's been moved and second for approval. Any discussion this time? We have a number of people that signed up. Perhaps that would be the council's preference to hear them speak first. And there are 22 people, so the policy is that you get less than 3 minutes. And I see a number of you have signed up as couples, and I don't know if that means both of you choose to speak. It depends on where you live. And so if you could let me know when I get to those names, if only one is going to be the spokesperson, that would be fine. First person to sign up was John Shales.
Good evening. Thank you for your time and your service to the city of Elgin. At that point, I just wanted to, so I am the property owner and love to answer any questions. I just wanted to fill in a couple of blanks that are not in the staff proposal. One of those is kind of the question of why. Why did we not develop this property before now? We had this approved back in 2008. And the reason is that the sanitary sewer was not there. We could not develop this property until Trunk 20 was completed. Trunk 20 was not completed until November of 2018, over 10 years after this development was approved at that point. So that's why we couldn't proceed forward with that. We really do believe that this is a development that respects and honors the neighbors to the west. The original design, the permit, the ordinance at that point, lists permitted uses of retail, office, 24-hour convenience stores, carry-out restaurants, eating places, drinking places, bars, outdoor eating and drinking, drug stores, contractor yard. We were planning to move our office up there back at that point, and veterinary services. I think you'd all agree that those would probably be less compatible at that point. I'd also like to point out, too, that we have spent a good time addressing concerns, meeting with the homeowners. We have met 3 different times with the homeowners. The primary meeting was back in November. It was a Zoom meeting. Many or most of the homeowners were a part of that. It was actually a very productive meeting. We thought we would get a list of things for us to consider. That's what we were told we were going to get. That list never came, unfortunately. I'd also like to point out that we did offer to sell the property to both the city and the homeowners to the west at significantly below what we paid for it back in the day. Forget about the carrying costs, forget about the mortgage payments and whatnot, but that's where the market is at this point. So that seemed like a fair thing to do. Just to wrap up really quick. So again, we really believe that this preserves and protects that neighborhood very well compared to the original design. I'd also like to point out that I know one of the concerns has been the removal of trees on the property. We did get a permit for that. We did agree to and continue to put up or left up a buffer zone along this west property line. This is Weldwood Road. This is in the neighborhood. If you're walking down the neighborhood, this is the trees that remain on site. We've also explained why we had to remove the trees. We had complaints from the Otter Creek Shopping Mall with water coming down the hill that we had to address. And the removal of the trees actually has made a significant reduction in the water that's flowing improperly down on that property. So with that, I'd be glad to answer questions or move on. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Jeff Pellick.
Thank you. My name is Jeff Pellick. I'm with Revco Ventures. I'm an Elgin-based real estate developer and home builder and commercial construction. I'm here tonight to, seek your approval for this project. There's not a lot for me to say because staff has done such a wonderful job articulating all the comments and things that we've done to try to make the plan better. I'd just like to state that we tried to do everything possible to be very good neighbors to the surrounding neighborhood. And we've added, we went from 213 trees that were called out by ordinance to 267 trees. We've built berms that are 460 feet long that are on open space, and the project has about 55% open space. So those are some blanks I kind of wanted to fill in. Other than that, I have my engineer here if anyone wants to have any engineering questions. And we have our lawyer here as well if there's any legal questions, but I just kind of wanted to fill in those blanks as well.
Okay.
Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. And the council will ask questions after the presentation is complete. Thomas Scherschel.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and councilpersons. I just want to address a couple of things because there's been such a good presentation that I don't want to repeat any of that. I do want to address, though, some of the comments that, from the Building and Zoning meeting that I think should be addressed. And there's a transcript of that, which you can read. I want to address what seem to be the negatives. There were a number of people there that had concerns and questions. I think you'll find you'll find that I don't think any of them were actually citizens of the city, but they are the neighbors right to the west of the proposed project. And they had two main concerns. One was that this wasn't zoned right, that it was supposed to be parks and open land, but you've heard tonight that really is an error. And in fact, on the front page of the development application review for tonight, you'll see at the bottom of the fourth paragraph that that was an error. It was never supposed to be marked for parks and open land. So that's just simply a mistake. The other objection or concern that was raised was, well, what about crime, and wouldn't a storage facility attract crime? So we FOIA'd all of the City of Elgin police records for the entire area, and it was very, very interesting to me anyway. If we look at the combination of the Target and the pizza place and the Chase and whatnot, they would have something like 2.8 police calls per year, and of different varieties. Some were for really nothing much and some were more serious. But when you looked at the police calls for a facility like this, a climate-controlled, high-security, always manned, lit-up storage facility, the police calls for that kind of facility were 0.2 per year, which means there was one call every 5 years. Now, there are other storage facilities that are not the same. They have no security, et cetera, and that's a different story. They aren't sky high, but they're a lot higher than that. For facilities like this, there's statistically almost no significant crime at a facility like this with security and lighting and that's manned all the time. So it appears that when we look at it, the prior project included 260 parking spaces, and the estimate, of course there are just estimates, but the estimate was 337 auto trips per day in and out, not including the 5 houses. This project has a total of 13 parking places. That includes handicap. So the amount of traffic would be massively different and massively less. No one goes to visit their furniture. Once it's in there until they leave. So you're not going to have the same kind of traffic. And in fact, there were 5 curb cuts on the old plan, and 7. 5 of which were for the houses and 2 for this plan. This now altogether completely will have only 1 curb cut, 1 entrance and exit, and that's on Weld Road. There'll be no curb cuts at all on Weldwood Drive. So looking at the entire picture, and lastly but not least, well, 2 things, lastly but not least, the original plan would have 113 trees. This plan has 267 trees. But lastly, the land as it sits there now brings precious little to the city in terms of dollars or much of anything else. The tax revenue that would be generated, that's been estimated from this project, would be $215,493 per year, plus or minus about 4 or 5%, depending who your accountant is. Sort of like depending who your lawyer is, I guess. But depending how your figures work. Of that,
Please start wrapping your comments up.
$149,000 would go to schools. So it looks like, to me, it looks like an interesting and decent project. Thank you.
Thank you. Laura Warda.
I'd like to defer my time to our designated speaker.
Okay. Nancy Keating. Okay. Patrick Griffin.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. My name is Pat Griffin. I'm an attorney for the Wildwood Oaks residents. We just recently found out that this was going to be on tonight's meeting and that it wouldn't first be on the committee of the whole meeting. So I did yesterday share a memo. Hopefully most of you had an opportunity to read that. I'm certainly not going to repeat all of that here tonight. What I would like to do is just address a few items in the staff report, and then what we thought would be helpful is we've got a few people that are going to try to speak on designated topics. That will hopefully shorten the amount of time that we're presenting tonight, and hopefully that's a better use of your time. The first item I want to talk about in the report, and it was mentioned again tonight, is that this has been presented as a less intensive alternative than the 2008 approval. And the 2008 approval approved 5 residential lots and 3 commercial office buildings. The square footage of those improvements was 44,000 square feet. The current proposal you have before you, as is evidence in the numbers in the report, is 90,000 square feet. It's more than double the approved square footage. So this is not a less intensive use. It's a use that essentially doubles the square footage. And unfortunately, as you'll see in the diagrams in the report, it actually shifts that 90,000 square feet north on the site, closer to the residences that are going to be directly affected by it. So we think that is a negative thing, and we certainly don't think it's a less intensive alternative to the 2008 approval. The second item in the report I just want to touch on is the architectural elevations. We have had many communications with the developer. We've swung and missed a few times, and that sometimes happens between developers and residents. I understand that. But we were disappointed in reading the report that there's going to be architectural elevations on buildings A, B, and E, which essentially front Weld Road, and that building D, I believe it's D or E, whichever one faces directly against the residences, is not going to have those architectural elevations. And that's just frustrating and disappointing from the standpoint of the residents who've been trying to work with the developer. The third item is really just a comment on the zoning and the comprehensive plan. We had no issue with the zoning. The zoning was the zoning back in 2008. Where we had an issue was this proposal's compliance with the future land use designations. And regardless of whether, I've heard that the Parks and Open Space was referred to as inappropriate. I've heard it referred to as a mistake. Regardless of what it is, it's the comprehensive plan land use map as it exists today. And regardless of whether that's changed or not, the residential component, I don't think anybody has argued is inappropriate. It was actually zoned for residential. The future land use map also shows it as residential. This plan completely disregards that, and there's really no good explanation or excuse why I believe you should disregard that. And I think in terms of just basic land use law, there has to be a really good reason to do that. That was basically it, but I do want to comment on just a couple of things that were indicated earlier this evening. The other uses that are available under the planned area business generally are numerous, as Mr. Shales pointed out. But none of those uses are available as a matter of right in a planned development. If Mr. Shales decided to come back and say, hey, scratch the office buildings, I want to do the 24-hour massage parlor or whatever else is available under that use, he'd have to come back and get approvals for doing that. That's not a matter as of right. So I think that's a key distinction. And the final comment is just on some of the parking and traffic. I would agree that fewer parking spaces is better, but when you look at this site, the entire site is developed. They're not parking spaces, but they're concrete, and that's significant. And on the traffic, probably not a huge concern, but there are more trips on the weekends when all these residents are out and about enjoying their homes than the previous development plan. So that's really it for me tonight. We obviously thank you for your time tonight. We thank you for the efforts that you guys have all made to become knowledgeable about the plan, as well as the Wildwood Oaks community. And there's some others that are signed up tonight to speak, so thank you again for your time.
Thank you, sir. Sharon Rosenberger.
Well, good evening. On behalf of our neighborhood, I would just like to say how very pleased we are to be here this evening and how appreciative we are to have this opportunity to come before you, present our concerns, and explain our reasonable objections to this proposed change in zoning, which would enable the development of a 90,000 square foot, 5-building self-storage facility within our neighborhood. There is no doubt for our neighborhood that this zoning change and subsequent development would have an extensive negative impact on our safe, tree-lined, secluded neighborhood, on our personal safety and security, on the surrounding environment and ecosystem, excuse me, including the wetland area, and on our property values as well. And what we're going to do is address each of these issues tonight and provide you with objective data and professional expertise that will confirm our concerns are warranted. In the 10 months, actually to this very date, since the Planning and Zoning Commission voted 5-1 against approving the zoning change, we have witnessed the beautiful, long-standing natural landscape of our forested neighborhood, including mature trees and native plants, all but eradicated due to the extensive clearing of Mr. Shale's property that took place in January in preparation for development, for which he had not yet even obtained the necessary approvals. No matter the tree removal permit obtained, nor the quality of the trees removed, without these trees and vegetation and the natural protective environment that they provide, our once abundant neighborhood wildlife, including white-tailed deer, raccoons, fox, ducks, and owls, just to name a few, were forced to find a different habitat. This radical removal of trees has starkly exposed our previously unseen neighborhood, which is now readily visible to all passersby on Randall Road, Route 20, and Weld Road, and it has already had a detrimental impact on our neighborhood's safety and security. We have come together as a community and embraced the opportunities that this challenge has afforded us. We've learned a lot about our city's government and have communicated with numerous city departments, council members, and staff, as well as Kane County Township and Preservation Resources. And we've been duly impressed by the professionalism, responsiveness of all with whom we've come into contact during this time in our efforts to become better informed citizens. So we thank you for answering our questions, returning our phone calls and emails, and visiting our neighborhood, and for your patience throughout this process. More than likely, everybody present here is well familiar with Mr. Shales and his company and his family's involvement in Elgin. What I'd like to do is give you a better idea of who we are as individuals, as a neighborhood, and collectively as contributing members to the City of Elgin community, in hopes of showing you we're passionate about the city we live in and the neighborhood in which we choose to make our homes. Our small neighborhood of 24 homes is united to preserve the safety, security, natural setting, and resources and way of life within our neighborhood. First and foremost, we want you to know that we are reasonable individuals. We understand that Mr. Shales, as property owner, has the right to develop his property pending the necessary approvals. And we also understand if it's not going to be the storage facility, that there will be something developed on the property in question. We reasonably object, though, to the change of zoning because it would allow the development of an industrial project within a residential neighborhood and eliminate the current residentially zoned parcel in order to accommodate the building of the storage facility. We have said from the beginning and throughout this process that we support the current zoning as is. Secondly, we are Elginites, and we are loyal to our city of choice. The average length of residency in Elgin for our neighborhood is 33 years, with many of us at 40 plus. 55% of our households have at least one member born in Elgin. 100% of our households have at least one member who works or has worked in Elgin. 80% have one member who attends or has attended school in Elgin, including Highland, Kimball, Larkin, and ECC. In fact, several of our neighbors, myself included, have taught in Elgin schools. 35% of us have owned a business in Elgin. So we are contributing members to the greater Elgin community. 100% of us shop local, support Elgin businesses, stores, and restaurants, thereby contributing to Elgin's commerce and tax base. As contributing members, we are service-minded and give back to our city. 70% volunteer for various Elgin organizations, 80% contribute to charities, 40% of us have served on Elgin boards or commissions. We appreciate and value living in the Elgin community and what it has to offer. When our neighbors were asked, what do you most value about living in Elgin? The answers were varied and included the natural beauty, recreational opportunities, the Fox River, parks, Elgin's rich history, safe neighborhoods, a small-town atmosphere in a big city, and our award-winning library. When asked, what do you most value about living in Weldwood Oaks? Well, the answers weren't quite as varied. 100% of households responded in almost identical fashion by citing our neighborhood's idyllic, nature-filled, picturesque, wooded, private, and serene environment. These same characteristics that drew the majority of us to build and or buy homes in our neighborhood, these same characteristics that have kept us living happily in our neighborhood for 17 plus years on average, are the very characteristics that are being threatened and will be eliminated by a change in zoning and the development of this self-storage facility. We hope you will agree with us that this facility has no place in our neighborhood. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Camille Gibson. Camille Gibson.
Good evening, and thank you, Mayor and council members. I come to you this evening not only as a homeowner, but that's directly impacted by this petition, but as a local real estate professional. Over the years, I've witnessed firsthand many factors that raise and lower residential property values. You know, just a reminder that real estate is not a commodity, and it is not, and what a property is worth depends on what someone is willing to pay. So the three factors that home buyers are interested in is the location, the condition, and the price. So in those three things, those three things are always rolling, and it can never change. So studies show that living close to certain businesses and facilities can diminish those property values. And the closer the proximity to those businesses will devastate the depreciation and, excuse me, I'm sorry. And the following businesses that are associated with those the depreciation for that are landfills, cemeteries, funeral homes, power plants, shooting ranges, strip clubs, hospitals, and lastly, storage facilities. So that is, those are the reasons why we greatly oppose this petition. So regardless of the market conditions, we all oppose this. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe it's Gary Civic. I can't quite make it out.
I like that title.
I should know better by now.
I didn't sign it, thank you. Hi, I'm Gary Swick, and I'm representing Friends of the Fox River. We were founded and continue to work to educate and empower the public to be a unified voice for protection, preservation, and restoration of our local natural resources. The group here is doing all they can to protect an area from the likely impacts of development. I'm here to support them, but more appropriately to speak about the future of wetlands in Elgin. Prior to human settlement, 30% of Kane County was a wetland. Wetlands are nature's sponge. When excess water arrives on the landscape, they store it and gradually distribute it into the groundwater or into surface water and through evaporation into the air. It's really a brilliant system that we now try to replicate with very expensive green infrastructure. The rule we know is that nature knows best. Nature has much experience. Humans really are the infants on the planet. Today, less than 1% of Kane County remain as wetland, and that includes the large river that runs through the middle. Though improving conditions for humans, through improving conditions for humans, we have dammed, diverted, drained, and developed the areas that through their design store water, provide essential habitat, and protect the Fox River from further degradation. In the July 4th storm, the flow of Tyler Creek went from 5.5 cubic feet per second, that's about a basketball, to 648 cubic feet per second. That was not directly from 3 inches of rain. It was primarily concentrated runoff from pavement. In the natural system, rain is absorbed. The situation here may be a matter of values. As Elgin builds out west of Randall Road with its 2050 plan, will progress be measured in tax revenue and jobs, or in protecting the important parts necessary to keep the system working? This site is the headwaters of Otter Creek, the most vulnerable part of its watershed. Interrupting groundwater recharge will have an impact upon Otter Creek and the river. As we enter a period where we are rethinking planning due to preparation for climate change, is it still wise to allow the remaining wetlands to be destroyed? It may be impractical to prevent private land development, but can we consider the natural system? In this case, the wetland is no longer high quality due to past abuse. Would it be wise to coexist in development? If a concrete footprint will be planted somewhere, could we require efforts to restore the wetland, in fact, into a higher quality, instead of allowing a buyout through mitigation? I might look and sound like the Lorax, but I don't want to have my legacy be that I stood idle as the last remaining wetlands in my county were sold to a mitigation bank and paved over. So thank you for your considerations in the future.
Thank you. You want to guess at that? We're having trouble with this.
Is it Vero or Vino?
Vino?
Is there an address?
Tw-
Is there an address?
Vern Tepe? Vern, you got to work on that.
The celebrity signature.
Boy, knowing you a long time, Vern, and I couldn't get Vern
right?
Tepe out of that.
As many of you know, I'm Vern Tepe, a member of the Kane County Board. And my district includes the projects that's being considered and all of the residents who are currently affected by this project. It's our job to handle zoning changes. The county board in unincorporated areas and yours in the city of Elgin. And when residents in an area that would be impacted by a zoning change have concerns, we take their objections and opinions very seriously. The property in question has been zoned for an office structure for over 15 years. The local residents who are impacted know this, and many of them purchased their homes with the full knowledge that that would occur. What they're objecting to is the change that would allow a storage business to be constructed, as well as the rezoning of some residential lots so that an even larger storage facility can be built. If this came to the Kane County Board, I'm quite confident that constructing a storage facility as part of an established neighborhood would not be approved. And I have three other issues that should be considered in your deliberations. First, a large segment of the property, somewhere about 2 acres, is classified as a wetland. I'm unsure about the exact classification, but this must be dealt with properly. Second, when it rains, a large amount of water comes from the Elgin Country Club golf course down the hill onto the property in question, and then onto Weld Road and the area around the Hobby Lobby parking lot. This is already creating issues and needs to be dealt with regardless of the zoning. And third, Mr. Shales did all of this planning initially without any contact with any of the people affected. And when they objected to his plans, he cut down most of the trees on the property without an approved plan, needlessly exposing the neighborhood to Route 20 and Randall Road. But when a development project changes the very nature of a community, no matter how small that community might be, I get concerned. When the value of the homes in the area are negatively impacted by a project, I get concerned. And when those residents really weren't contacted or been a part of the process, I get very concerned. So if this project is allowed to proceed as planned, an entire neighborhood will be adversely affected. This is not the way things should happen here in Elgin. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Keith Brown? Keith Brown? I didn't see him here. John Keating. Rob Gibson.
Mr. Mayor, council people, thank you for allowing us to present information on how this proposal affects our community directly. To give those of you a picture of our neighborhood that may not have ever been in the neighborhood yet, most of our homes are custom homes on at least an acre and heavily wooded land. Almost all of our homes are quite a bit uphill from the property that's in question where this project will take place. If this project goes through, all of our homes up top are going to be looking down on a sea of metal roofs for these storage buildings and a 3-story building all the way at the front towards Weld Road. No matter how big of a berm you put in, 5 foot to 11 foot, 12 foot, I've seen different stats in the paperwork, we sit so much higher that it doesn't matter. We are going to be all looking down on all of these metal roofs. In January, even though this project hasn't been approved, they came through and clear-cut almost 7 acres of property. Yes, they did leave a few trees here and there, but these pictures right here can show you what it was before and what it is now. This is Mr. Shell's property. He got a permit to cut the trees, and he had the right to cut the trees. But was it the right thing to do when you don't even have a project already approved by the city? I run my own business, and if I'm going to spend that amount of money to do something, I'm going to make sure ahead of time that I have something approved so the money is well spent and done responsibly. Part of what is kind of getting glossed over in this project is it's not just a storage facility that's going in here. Part of what we object to is taking some of the land that's already zoned residential, and I'll show you on the pictures here. It's zoned residential within our neighborhood, and they're asking to turn that property into commercial property, rezoned from residential to commercial. As you can see, all these houses are right here. This property from here all the way down to here, they're looking to put that into commercial property instead of keeping it as residential as it is now. That's not even close to Weld Road. It's right behind the mall, yes, but it's tucked within the neighborhood. Since the trees have been cut down, it has lit up our house all night long, every night, from the back of the shopping mall, from the movie theater across the street, from the taillights and stoplights at Randall and 20. It has bombarded us, not to mention the sound and everything else coming through. We have already taken steps to help protect our house from some of this, but it's going to take years. We put in 24 trees on our property, on the front side and to the south end of our property. 12 of those trees are 16 to 18 feet tall, and it doesn't even start to cover them all. The lights, the sound, Randall Road. You can sit at the stoplight at Randall and 20 and see our house directly through. Even in the winter before those trees were cut down, you couldn't see our house. Some of those trees that were cut down, I couldn't even wrap my arms around. They were 40 foot tall, and that spanned across. A lot of people say they're useless trees, they're not good trees, but let me tell you, they're trees and they provided a huge purpose for our neighborhood. And to come through and wipe them out before you're even approved, it's like a slap in the face to the neighborhood when there's no reason to even have them wiped out yet. We're asking the council to keep the current zoning of residential on the part that's further to the south here, and deny the possibility of turning that into commercial. There's another property at the end of our dead-end street, which is currently farmland, that they're possibly going to be selling down the road here. The further implications are, if this residential property here gets turned over to commercial, they can say, guess what, you did it over here, let's do it down here at the end of the street, still within our neighborhood. And I'm running out of time here. The other part of this is really the wetland that's within the property. Back in 2005, in the information that they submitted originally for this proposal, they had a wetland delineation report done by Hay and Associates. Those reports are good for 5 years by King County stormwater regulations, so it's not even applicable anymore. That report initially showed that the wetland in this area was 0.87 acres, and it had an FQI, and that's the quality of the wetland, of 6.7. There is currently a report, even though we've asked for it and we've been told it doesn't exist, that Hay and Associates went out and did reevaluate the wetland, and it's showing that now the wetland has just about doubled in size. It's at 1.49 acres. We don't know the FQI of the wetland at this point, but we have the paperwork because we FOIA'd the Army Corps of Engineers, and it was part of their report, so we can supply that if needed. In addition to those things, inside some of the paperwork that's currently out there in the current planning and zoning paperwork under recommendations and finding of fact, in section J, it's marked that this property has no wetlands or water courses through it. We have reporting directly that went through the Army Corps of Engineers that says it's absolutely there, and their original report says it's there. It's just grown since. Remediation of the wetland of this size, 1.49 acres, depending on the quality, the FQI score, if it's 7 or above, they're looking at about $300,000 worth of credits that they'd have to pay to redo some wetland in other areas in King County. The last and final point is the road safety from this. If any of you have been at the end where you come out from Office Max and Big Lots and whatnot, there's an entrance to Weld Road at their northern border. Even turning all the way at that entrance, left or right onto Weld Road currently, it's a blind corner. I've almost been hit 3 times in the past week and a half coming out of there. They're looking to push that driveway even further towards that blind curve.
Okay, please start wrapping your comments up.
Yes, sir, thank you. All in all, this facility that they're trying to jam into our residential neighborhood is not compatible with a residential neighborhood. And the area that they're trying to convert into commercial property that's currently zoned residential up top here, the only reason they're touting to keep that as open land, we're giving your neighborhood a gift of keeping it open land, is so they can build a larger storage facility because you need a certain percentage of open land. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have the Stevens family. Just one. Okay.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks again for the chance to speak before you guys tonight. I'm going to talk quickly about the safety impact and the concerns of me and my fellow neighbors that will be directly impacted by this. My name is Eric Stevens. I've lived in Elgin my entire life up until 5 years ago when we decided to move away from Elgin by moving about 100 feet away. So I just consider myself an extension of your front line. Grew up there, learned to play basketball at the Channing Y, lifeguarded at the Wing Park pool, and I was even a teller at KCT Credit Union for about 5-6 years. So definitely familiar with the area, love it, and glad to be close to it. But getting back to the security related concerns that we have there is, and I do appreciate some of the comments that were made before, but really the 2 points I want to make is it removes some of the current primary protections that we have in place, living that close to a existing public space, and then 2, it adds new threats that previously didn't exist. Currently, we're protected by 3 main things. Visibility is blocked. No one really knows that we're there because those trees, some were there and some that still are. 2 is proximity. We do have a decent amount of separation from where people come and go on those commercial spaces. And then 3 is access. By having that wetland there and having the highly wooded and vegetated area, there's not a lot of access to come from outside of Weldwood Road to get onto our property. I didn't know I was going to have a human easel for this. Thank you. So those are 3 things that exist now that really do keep us safe and being so close. And it's a huge value to the property, as was stated before. But added some of the added concerns are obviously the crime that do come with that. I mean, obviously, I think, you know, I could put a FOIA report in front of you with my analytics as well as those representing the development. But I think what they, you know, and they may be slightly different, but they'll both agree that this does come with crime. You're putting unattended, potentially valuable items in a facility that, while is manned, I don't know how well they're going to, how many man they plan on having for 90,000 square feet of potential valuables. But with 13 parking spots, I can assure you it's going to be inadequate. But what comes with that, if you even look in 2016, just down Randall Road from us, we had a storage facility that was found to have basically cartel weapons. They were found to be cartel weapons. He was actually sentenced recently. I mean, this include fully automatic weapons, grenade launchers, and we're talking about this being within 100 yards of where my pregnant wife and my 2-year-old son sleep at night. And, you know, that puts me as the man who stood before God and promised to protect these people, you know, and on high alert. And that's not something that we had planned on. And obviously, that's for that reason you don't see a significant amount of public storage facilities being placed in neighborhoods. But, you know, at the end of the day, I do respect, as a property owner, I respect Mr. Shale's, you know, decision to do with his property what he wants to within you know, the law and what you're willing to approve. But however, I think it's you know, when you look at it, you got to take a cost benefit, and when people look at what you do, they care more about why you do it, why you do what you do, more than they care about what you do. And I'm looking at, you know, a significant amount of risk to our health and safety for the promise of, what was it, 215,493 tax dollars. So, you know, the decision is obviously yours, but I hope you hear our concerns, and I thank you for the time to speak for you.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
The Nicholson family. The Besh family. Mike Anderson.
Hi, my name is Mike Anderson from Hager Engineering. I'm here on behalf of the development team, who are the civil engineer for the project. I just wanted to talk just big picture about stormwater, which is, a lot of this was brought up before, but the property sits below the Weldwood neighborhood. There's a low point to the Weldwood drainage area that comes into Weldwood Road and then makes its way to a perched wetland that's within this property. That wetland sits up at the west end of the site. It is, as was previously mentioned, in 2005 was measured at 0.87 acres, and now 16 years later was measured at 1.49 acres. And this was by, as was previously mentioned, Hay and Associates, who was retained to do the wetland consulting. That wetland is not Army Corps jurisdictional. It's a Kane County isolated wetland, and according to the report, is of a low floristic quality dominated by invasive species. And so what the development is proposing to do is to fill that wetland and buy credits in a wetland bank, as is permissible by the Kane County Stormwater Ordinance. In order to get the wetland or the stormwater routing, the development is proposing to put storm sewers in to convey the water from that low area where the wetland is presently located down to a stormwater basin within the development. The stormwater basin will be at the low area along Weld Road. There's about a 25-foot elevation difference from Weldwood Road down to Weld Road. And the storm sewer system that'll be put in will convey the water from that upper area down to the lower area, and this will prevent the erosion that we've seen happening due to the failed drainage in the wetland that's happened over the past 15 years. So that's just kind of the big picture of stormwater. I just want to iterate, we're going to follow all of the requirements that the city and the Kane County Stormwater Ordinance have for stormwater management. We're not asking for any leniency, and I'm here to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, thank you. I believe it's Justin Pellock. Pass. All right. Okay, that's it. Okay, brings us back to the council. The council have any questions for the developer or Mr. Malat? Ms. Martinez.
Thank you, Mayor. I just truly want to thank the residents for coming out tonight and for leaving your pots and pans at home. It has happened. I know you've all been reaching out about this project and that you have concerns. I consider the residents and the developers to be a valuable part of Elgin. My thoughts to the development team are that you initially took the misstep by not trying to do community outreach in a neighborhood that is so close to your proposed project. It's all about being a good neighbor, building relationships, and trying to find solutions and allow compromise. It's the unknown that brings fear, mistrust, and misunderstanding. Tonight was very educational to us. Everybody was very professional, educational, like I said, and we appreciate that. You know, there's real concerns here. And for me, it's hard to support this project, but I'm just speaking about me. Thank you.
Mr. Dixon.
Thank you. Mark, I appreciate the presentation. Excellent as always. Thank you to the community for coming out. I had the pleasure and the privilege of having a couple of conversations with Mr. Shales, and then also going out there and meeting with the residents and touring the property, even on a golf cart. So just seeing the full scope of what's happening out there, and I hear the emotion. Due to the change of circumstances that are directly connected to those trees being removed. And so I'd certainly consider that. But as a council, we also have to think, or should be thinking at least, long-term, big picture, what is going to be developed eventually. Now, it was already stated that we already have plans, so we have approved planning and zoning for this region. And something one day may develop if we don't strategically decide what we're going to do with that property so that we don't find ourselves here 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road. So I have a couple of questions. Okay, and I'm going to start with you, Mark, if you would. So, Mark, there's been plenty of mention about the trees.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and there's a permit process in order to remove these trees, yes, correct? And these trees, I assume, and correct me if I'm wrong, they have to be evaluated, right? Because you don't want to remove good trees, right, that have been there for, 50, 75, 100 years, right? So can you educate us a little bit about what that tree process is, okay, the evaluation that took place?
Sure. And thank you for the question, Councilman. That's exactly what happened. We have, as you're very well familiar, a tree preservation ordinance that is part and parcel of the zoning ordinance. It does allow for removal of particular trees. However, that can't happen until there is first an evaluation of the trees by a certified arborist. The property owner did go through that process. They gave us a survey that showed all the trees on the property and identified those trees by species, size, and most importantly, by health. And all of those criteria are also dictated in the zoning ordinance. It ranks the trees from a category of A through D depending upon the desirability of those particular species. And I'm going to speak generally here. An A would be your oaks. The Ds, Cs and Ds would be things like box elder, ash, which is now susceptible to the emerald ash borer, Siberian elm, and then cross-references those with a ranking of 1 through 6 for the particular health, 1 being a perfectly good tree, 6 to a dead tree. And then the arborist went through and then said, based upon the matching up of the desirability of the species and the particular ranking of that particular trees, recommended whether that tree should be retained or removed. And there's a 4-page spreadsheet that dictates the assessment of each of those trees that was attached to the tree removal permit that we reviewed prior to the issuance of that permit.
Okay, and just so that I'm clear, the arborist that did this evaluation, was this being the city's arborist, or was this the arborist hired by Shells McNutt?
Arborist hired by the property owner.
Okay, and that's typical in developments. We pass that cost along essentially, right, to the developer.
Absolutely. It is no small feat to inventory the number of trees that were on that property, notwithstanding the ranking or health of species. It was quite a task.
Okay, and this is a question for you too, and Mr. Shells may be able to speak to this, but the timeline of events. So it was explained that the things went to planning and zoning. Okay, after it was denied at planning and zoning, the January, that's when all the trees were removed. Now, the trees were removed after the approval for the trees to be removed, but before any plan, of course, was approved. So when we were talking about plans today, right, we were talking about planning and zoning or plans, period, for that space versus the tree being removal, right? Okay, so when exactly were the trees removed in relation to the planning and zoning meeting?
Sure, and I'll let Mr. Shells approach the other microphone to add more detail. It's been suggested, though, and I just want to add a slight different perspective. It's been suggested that there was no approved plan for this property. Well, that's not entirely true.
Okay.
There still is the 2008 approved development plan that Mr. Shells could come in and get a building permit for.
Right.
So,
right. But he wasn't. He was trying to do the other property.
That is true.
Right.
That is true.
Okay. All right.
To your question about the timeline, so the permit that we were issued with regard to the tree removal was issued on November 3rd. The tree removal process at that point was started on January 28th and was primarily done in February. It was about a 3-week process at that point. So I'd also like to, if you don't mind, sir, kind of address why we took the trees down.
Yeah, I don't know if I heard you clearly. January 28th is when the trees were removed? Started to be removed. Started to be removed.
Yeah, it was a 3-4 week process.
Right. The planning and zoning vote happened when? September, right? So it was a few months before. Right. Okay. Go ahead now.
Yeah. So one of the things I wanted to point out is that we have been talking with the neighbors, no less than 6 communications between that time of talking about tree removal and why we had to do that.
Okay, pause. Did those communications take place between September and January?
It took place between October and January, yes.
October and January, go ahead.
Including a meeting on the premises, January 7th. We met with a handful of the residents to walk the west property line, to look at the trees that were marked. So that was 3 weeks before the tree removal began, just to talk that through. Okay?
Okay.
So part of the reasons that we needed to remove the trees. So this is the fence that is on the property line of the Otter Creek shopping mall. Okay, so you can see trees are growing into the fence. at that point. This is the water, this is the backside of the Otter Creek shopping mall, and this is going uphill, and you can see that same fence which defines the border between their property and my property. That's Otter Creek shopping mall and my property. There is all this runoff that is coming down this hill that was never intended to come down the hill. You can see that the trees have taken out some of the fence at that point. What we had learned with the city's help is that there's actually what's called a French drain. So a French drain, if you don't know, is a trench that is dug up, a pipe is put in the bottom, and it's filled with rocks. That French drain is on my property at that point, okay? And that was installed at the time that the Otter Creek Shopping Mall was built, okay? So it was for the benefit of the downstream organization at that point. Well, here's a couple of pictures. You can kind of get an image of this line. By the way, that French drain goes all the way around the property, so it's on two sides of my property and continues south. You can see how the trees and the roots and the debris have actually gotten into those rocks and caused that to fail. So the overgrowth of the trees and whatnot is actually what was causing a lot of this water to come down, and this never dried up. They couldn't replace that asphalt because it was wet all the time at that point. So, and it was destroying their fence. We also had to remove the trees from the standpoint of doing a full review of the wetland. We're not denying that there's wetland on the property. We never have at that point, and we need to deal with it correctly, and we will. Keep in mind, there is a 25-foot drop across this, right? Don't think of a wetland as kind of that down low area. This is kind of what Mike Anderson talked about as kind of just a shelf, a little depression at that point that built up. I must not have grabbed it. Actually, the aerial photos from King County from the 1970s and 80s that show this, there was no wetland. So this is a wetland that has grown up certainly in my lifetime, probably like in the last 30 years. It's actually the siltation. It's the water coming in and sitting, and because of that vegetation that's trapped at that point. So that's why it's a low quality wetland at that point. So there are real reasons that we had to remove those trees. And also, please keep in mind, we only removed trees that did not need to be replaced. So that goes to the quality and you know, the health and those things that have grown up, right? So on the property today, there are 100 trees that have remained. I know it's nice to say it's clear cut at that point, but there's 100 trees that are still on that property, half of which are along that west property line that faces the neighbors. So.
Okay. And how long has the water issue been an issue?
For Otter Creek?
For Otter Creek, yeah. Like, how long have they been telling you?
They've been complaining about that for about 3 years at that point. For
3 years, okay. And out of curiosity, why didn't you correct that 3 years ago?
Because we were working with, I had removed some individual trees at that point. Then we discovered this. This is really hidden. You know, this doesn't look like a linear French drain that's probably 1,000 feet long, right? It took us a while to discover what was taking place on the land at that point. Further investigation has shown that this used to be farmland. So that's why it's mentioned in one of the letters that we sent in. We're bringing in an expert that deals with farmers' tile and how they can break and cause other issues downstream at that point. His name is Tom Huddleston. He's a local expert in these things. So we've hired him to be a part of this team too. So.
Okay. And back to these communications that took place between October and January. I think I may have interrupted you, but were you going to give the timeline for those communications as well?
It's in your packet, but I could do. Would you like?
Well, I'll just ask you some questions. Yeah, I just wanted to publicly say it, but I can ask you some questions about those communications. So obviously the neighborhood has some concerns, and they may have requested some things from you, or you may have suggested some changes. And I'm just going to call them concessions, generally speaking.
Sure.
Can you tell us what concessions you made in regards to their concerns?
Yeah, can we bring up the layout of the property? Let me grab some additional.
Yeah, no problem. Take your time.
Yeah, this is good, Bart. Let's start here and then maybe go back to the previous one if need be at that point. So, some of the concessions that we've made, let me get my notes out. So we did add, can I talk over here? Is that okay? Can everybody hear me? So this berm that's, oh, there, well, it doesn't show it on the screen. So the berm behind the building is now taller at that point, so that would be to the west, and it has more trees on it. So blocking the views and, yeah, thanks, Mark, you're kind of doing that. We also added the berm to the west. We've talked about extensively, so that yellow area that's there, that's where the residents, the houses would be added into their subdivision, right? So we've talked about, as a part of this development, the economics work out so that we don't have to develop that acre, 1.75 acres at all at that point, and we can put a berm on there to help shield them, shield the houses from the even the Hobby Lobby that's existing there. As they've said, they're really high. They're going to look down at any development that's on this property at that point. We also re-engineered the building slightly so that you can see, gosh, see this opening right here? That opening used to be over here, shining west. That would have allowed headlights and things like that to shine up that way. We've eliminated that, so it's shining south at that point. We've really tried to incorporate the things that we heard at the meeting, the Zoom meeting back in October at that point. It included native, natural, Illinois natural vegetation, adding that to the design as well. Those are the things we heard. Again, we never got a list. We were expecting to get a list of things to consider, to incorporate in, and we didn't get that communication back at that point. So, Jeff, did I cover everything?
Yeah, as far as the plan goes, I think you got most of the benefits that we
added.
Right.
The trees, the count of trees from 213 to 267, the berm, the pollinator plantings on the berm, which would bring in natural butterflies and bumblebees and hummingbirds and stuff like that. So we're trying to enhance that area solely at our expense and for the benefit of the neighborhood. That's what we did that for. We could build this project, with 55% open space, we could meet the requirements of open space without that property. But we chose to make it a buffer for the neighborhood.
Right.
So that's kind of what we were planning.
Right. And although there are more trees being planted than were removed, there's no way to possibly plant trees that were of the size that were previously there, right? That's just nature of it all, right?
Really transplant so many inch trees,
Right. Okay. Sure.
Increase the height of the evergreen trees at installation from 6 feet to 8 feet. So it gets a little bit more coupled with the larger berm and the expanded berm.
Sure. And Mr. Shales, you talked about there being two studies that are currently in the waiting. Can you talk about those, please? Yes.
Yeah, so as was previously mentioned, there was the one from 2005. There is a more current one with the development. Actually, Jeff and his team paid for that at that point. It's not complete. We have to do more study on those farmer's tiles to see what's going on there to complete that report.
Okay. All right. I'm going to leave it for the rest of my colleagues, and I'll just make this final statement. I served on planning and zoning for, let's call it 2 terms. So I'm familiar with the process, and so I certainly respect Mark's professionalism and his knowledge in this area, which is just really unmatched. But that doesn't mean that staff always gets it right, in my opinion. And I think that's probably indicative of the planning and zoning vote. And I've had to weigh in on in your conversations, and we've had some good conversations, and then my conversations over the past several months with the neighborhood here too. So I just want to be clear on my position prior to me even taking the votes that I will not be voting in favor of this, not because I believe you have bad intentions, but I think there were some concerns on how this started, and I think there's an even larger concern on that property development period. And I think that as a city council, we must revisit this all these years later to figure out what we're going to do going forward. But I certainly appreciate you saying, well, I tried to sell it to the city, I tried to sell it to the neighborhood, and maybe those are some things that we have to revisit. But we have to think about the future of this property, this neighborhood, and although they are not city residents, it doesn't matter. Right, and I'm not saying you made that point, but I'm just making the point because what's right is right and what's wrong is wrong, no matter if you live in the city or outside of the city, right? They're still people, right? And we must consider them like we would consider our own city residents, essentially.
So do you think the original development with the two-story building and the two single-story buildings with the 260 parking spots is a better solution?
Well, I'm not going to say that that's a better solution. I'm going to say that given who we are as a community today, we need to look for a new solution. Okay. Thank you for your time. Thank you, Mark. I appreciate it.
Any other questions for Mr. Malat? Comments from the council? Mr. Thorne.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Excellent presentation, Mark, as always. I guess I have a question for Mr. Shales. Your father's Jack Shales, the late Jack Shales, correct?
Correct.
If he were here and he heard all these people in the audience speak, many of us know and remember your wonderful late father.
Thank you.
I don't think he would be for this project. I think he'd be for these people because he was a people person. And I've known him almost as long as you. Your mother was my den mother when I was in Cub Scouts. And when we got out of line, he had to make us march around the neighborhood. He was a true caring man that built your company up. He built it on honest values, and he cared about everybody, not just his business, not just his property, not just his projects. He cared about neighborhoods, people's feelings, people that lived there, and cared about their view, their trees, what their houses meant, their neighbors meant. And there's no way that I would believe that he would go through with this. I understand a lot of the pluses and minuses here. I'm familiar with the property. In fact, I'm a little surprised that you said that after discovery you realized it was once a farmland. Well, you can tell by the foundation of that one barn that was a barn. When I was a kid, I played in that barn. I remember that barn. It was cream colored. That was the Weld Farm. And the Weld Farm encompassed at one time, years ago, all of Elgin Country Club. But that portion of their farmland was too hilly to farm, so they leased it to the members of the country club until finally in the late 20s when the members bought it. But the barn was there for many, many years. It's probably been gone now about, I would guess, 35 years. I hear all the sides. I care about Elgin. I care about our growth. Preservation and progress is something I like to state. But I care about people. And I won't be supporting this project because someday down the road, something might be able to be changed to make it better. But in the meantime, I want it to be the best it can for all of them. Thank you.
Sure. A point of clarification. So my father was the owner of this property up until the time he died. So that the current development that's on that is actually his hand at that. So those offices, the lack of green space, the residences into that neighborhood, are all his hand at that point. And I would make the point that actually this development protects that neighborhood much better than that original development did. So I appreciate your respect for my father, but this is his hand at that property.
I understand that. I just also remember what he was like, and if he were here and he listened to them, I think that would affect his decision to develop it. Thank you.
Other questions from the council?
Chime in.
Mr. Shaw.
Well, we've heard it all tonight. First of all, I apologize. We shouldn't be conjecturing about applicants' deceased parents and our applicants for rezoning. I apologize, and this is just not professional in my viewpoint. You did bring up the Shales family, and they've been a part of our community, just as like many of you have as well. And so it's not a, well, we've been a part of the community, and they're not a part of the community. It's everyone has been. And so I don't look at it through the lens of, well, they've done more, we've done more. It's, I look at the merits of the zoning application itself. I don't look at the tax dollars, to be honest with you. To be honest with you, the thing that I look at the most is property rights. You should do what you want to do on your property, and I should be able to do what I want to do on my property. Now, we live in a community, and so there's rules. There's zonings, and there's limitations to that, and so that's what this process goes through. But when you look at the different projects and the one that's currently approved, and then you look at this one, you have to say to yourself, it seems like this one's a better option than the other one. And so I struggle why to say no to this one when the other one's already been approved. And I think this one takes a lot more into account the neighborhood than the other one. The water runoff issue is very interesting to me. We get frustrated that there's this water runoff issue on his property. The water's not coming from his property. The water's coming from most of your properties in the golf course. Have we had a petition to the golf course to say, hey, I'd love to, you should change your parking lot to impervious parking lots, and you need to better control your water runoff so that it doesn't impact our neighborhood and his property? I haven't heard that. I think his plan follows the law, utilizes Kane County standards to provide a water plan to manage that runoff. And so I can't say that's being ignored. I feel like that's being managed. I think it's actually improving based on what we've heard tonight. I'm really surprised at the comment of the concern about rezoning the residential to commercial. So it sounds like the neighborhood would rather have 5 more homes in the neighborhood than it to be rezoned to commercial and just left open in green space. So if that's the case, then why don't you just buy the whole property altogether? Then you can manage it and you can keep it all open space. So here's the thing. I live in a home as well where I'm surrounded by open space as well. 2 properties are open properties that surround my house. I know that I don't control the destiny of that property. Why? Because I've decided that I'm not going to pursue trying to purchase that property. And so I own my property, and I do what I want on my property according to the rules, but knowing that can't control the neighbor, what they do with their property. We've had other situations that have come before us where we've had these types of situations. We've had situations where we've had residents complain about a ComEd property where they wanted to put through power lines, and they bought homes next to property owned by ComEd. What does ComEd do? They put up transmission lines. You bought homes next to commercial property. You had to at some point understand that there's going to be something in that commercial property. Now you're telling me that you're going to get upset about the rezoning of that residential to commercial, but that residential piece that's going to commercial really has no impact or bearing on, or negatively, it's actually positively impacting your neighborhood. And so I am struggling with some of the arguments around that. The trees being cut down, that's not uncommon at all. I mean, he provided some of his reasons, but to be honest with you, we've seen many other projects where a developer will come through and prepare the land for sale or for a future project. Why? Very similar to why when you sell a home, you declutter your home. That's why most developers clear the land, because it makes it more marketable. There is a business aspect to this as well, because it is a commercial piece of property. I go back to it. You could have purchased this property. It was offered to you. I don't know if you have an HOA that you have, but somehow you were able to organize pretty well to hire legal representation tonight. So it feels like there's opportunities that you could have done something from an HOA perspective to purchase some of this property, and even, you know, done some of the redevelopment yourself if you wanted to use the 5 parcels to build 5 more homes and leave the rest of the commercial space open. That would have been an option for your area as well. One thing I do get bothered by is the fear factor. I think the best fear factor that I have while I've been up here, I've only been up here 9 years. I'm a relatively new council member compared to some. I think my favorite one was when LP tanks were being proposed over at Bunge's. And they said that LP tanks close to a residential property is like having a bomb in your backyard. Now, that's my greatest fear factor fact that I've heard. There's some, I get there's some concern about crime, but that's true for anything that happens. We're always at risk of that. If you put any type of additional presence there of something, and you do clear a piece of property, yes, you are going to have, people are going to have more access and more visibility to your community. I don't know how to alleviate that. I think that's your biggest concern, is probably just the visibility is what I would imagine, because no one even knows there's homes back there because it's so well shielded by all of that. And so any type of development would have, I believe, would have opened that up. And so I think it's unavoidable if you expect any type of development on that property. I will be supporting it. I think it's a better option than what's currently on the books now. I think there's a demand for the product in our community. You know, I'm assuming that if this does pass, I would expect that probably many of you will use these services someday. People say that, but that does happen. You know, I think the same thing was true for other developments that we've seen come through. I will be supporting it. I do hope that my peers up here look at this from a factual perspective and not emotional perspective. I vote on a lot of things for zoning things and for businesses that come in that I have no desire to support that business or cause or what have you, but I look at it from a factual perspective because that's what we're asked to do. I'm not supposed to look at it from well, I don't like this person or I don't like this business or something. So from a factual perspective, at least on how I'm viewing it, I don't see why this is worsening the outcome. You know, when I look at the previous property or the previous project that was proposed, if I do a rough estimation, it looks like there's even a greater number of square feet of impervious space and a greater footprint that was actually going to be cleared to support that when you include the homes as well as the office buildings. And so, like I said, to me this is like in the right direction. So that's where I'm at tonight. I'll let my peers share some additional comments as well.
Anybody else? Mr. Good.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for all of the comments. I have to be honest, planning and zoning isn't my strong suit. I came from strategic planning committee, whereas some of my peers up here came from planning and zoning. And so to Councilman Shaw's point about being factual, for me leading into this decision, it started with the planning and zoning decision. That was 5-1. And then leaned on some of my colleagues to kind of wade through this process. Ideally, the outcome is that, you know, both parties get what they want. And right now, I don't see an outcome to achieve that. And it's unfortunate because as comments have been made, we're discussing the economics of that property and we're discussing the aesthetic value of the trees that were there. And currently we don't exist in a society that values the natural capital and natural services of our vegetation. I'm happy to hear that it's starting to progress. There are some municipalities, well, not municipalities, countries that are starting to assess if that's a way they want to move with their economics. I don't think it's going to happen around here anytime that's going to alleviate the property owner's concerns about it. But I did want to mention that just to introduce it. I don't know if any of you have heard of it, but just so you know, natural capital and natural services is a way that we can start building more value into these properties that aren't just to clear cut it, strip it, and then use it for a development. So with that being said, I am leaning on the decision of the Planning and Zoning Commission and their initial decision. I will not be supporting this tonight, and that's all I have.
Okay. Anybody else? Mr. Stefan?
I'll go. Yeah, I like to wait till last and listen to everybody else's comments along with everybody who came and spoke tonight, so thank you very much. Two things for me that make me really resistant to this development. First of all is, I think some people have alluded to it, but we're certainly supposed to be looking at this through what's known as the LaSalle factors, and I can't get past those, particularly the first one that talks about compatibility with what's around there. And this is a new project. This isn't filling in a building that's already there. This is developing new, and I just can't get past how it's incompatible with the neighborhood that's immediately to the west. I vaguely remember the 2008 approval of that plan. I would comment, even though it's kind of superfluous, that I would doubt that that would get passed now, or I would support it now, and I would hope that that parking lot as it was planned back in 2008 would certainly be impervious or be designed in a way that would address the wetlands that are there and the issues that we have with the wetlands that apparently, according to the latest Hain Associates report, is bigger than it was back in 2005. So I have a problem based on those factors, but also, as was discussed by Councilperson Good and some others, just this need to be more aware of what we're doing with our water, what we're doing with our wetlands, where that goes, how that's handled, and having to get beyond just putting culverts in and moving the water somewhere else and pushing it to somewhere else and paying money to create wetlands or some compensation somewhere else. So for those reasons, I'm not supporting this project either. I just don't see that it fulfills the LaSalle factors and the problems with that wetland. So thank you.
Okay. Ms. Martinez, anything, or are you done? Okay. I have a couple of... Okay, sure.
This has been so educational for me. I did work out at that area, Otter Creek, and I remember that when this was in 2004, when we had to park our cars in back, there was always an area there that when the weather was terrible, it was very slick and slippery, and it makes me wonder, maybe this is why that's been happening. It's been happening for a long, long time. And it wasn't until then. I just thought it was weird that you have this mall here, and then there's just one area where when you drive by there, it was just dangerous, but nobody could figure it out, or it just seemed weird, and I'm just wondering, maybe it's been a problem for a long, long time, never know, but that's all I wanted to say. Thanks.
Mr. Shaw.
Yeah, real quick question on the water, on the stormwater management plan. Water's not actually pushed off the property; it's managed on the property in the retention. Is that the current plan?
Yes.
Okay, gotcha. Which is actually probably an improvement over what we have currently right now with it running onto other properties right now. Okay. The other piece, I guess, the comment on the credits, we have to kind of look at ourselves too, because we were party to these types of offset credits. I mean, we had the whole property of the old school over there to support the tollway. So I mean that's very common to happen, and we've done that ourselves and partaken of that. So I guess I wouldn't consider that as a negative.
Growing up, every area, Otter Creek, all the way across Randall Road, where the movie theaters are, that all was wetlands when I was growing up. That was all marshy, wet, spongy land. So now we've been developing that area and pushing water everywhere around, and now we have water going across roads. So yeah, I agree. But because it's happened up till now, I think apparently your argument is we should just keep going because...
No, we're managing it. That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
That's being managed much differently than other properties have in the past. That's why you see the standards have changed so much from Kane County over the years. I mean, most of these standards, were never in place when, pretty much all the surrounding properties probably went in for the most part. That's why I'm saying things are improving. There is more visibility to that. There is more recognition for that.
Comes to the mayor. Really quick.
Thank you. Am I good? Hello? Testing? Real quick, I commend Councilmember Thorne for his comments. I think that he was doing it tastefully in respect to the Shells family. I agree with you wholeheartedly, and I didn't know him as well as you did, but I did know him, and your words were very true. Okay. And then on the idea of my property, I do what I want to do, you do what you want to do in your property, I think you're 100% correct about that. But I'm called, and I think that we should all be considerate of our neighbors, and because we should be loving our neighbors, right? And so we don't do anything on our property because we have to be considerate of what's next door, right? So that's a thought process, right? Yeah. And so when it comes to, and I have one question going back to the 2018 mistake about the parks. On the map, it was marked as a park, but this was done in, well, before 2018. I mean, it was solidified in 2018, but it had been worked on prior to that. How did that occur and thus not catch it until, now?
That's a very fair question, Councilman. Would we have certainly preferred that not be depicted as contrary to the zoning? Absolutely. All I can offer you is that it was not a deliberate recommendation by staff in the review process. What I can offer to you is to simply consider that what we tried to depict in the future land use plan was 74 square miles, which was roughly, I jotted down some numbers just to 47,500 acres on an 11 by 17 piece of paper, and the area that was mistakenly depicted was 3 acres, 0.0077%. So we missed it. The consultant put it on there, shouldn't have. In the course of staff review, the tip of a pencil didn't get caught, and now regrettably we've had to address it. It still doesn't change the fact, however, the property's been zoned for commercial development for more than 14 years, and the Parks and Recreation Master Plan, which is part and parcel of our comprehensive plan, had no calls for parks or open space anywhere near this property.
Okay. But the 2018 plan that was published was voted on.
Yes, sir.
And approved.
Yes, sir.
As is.
Yes, sir.
So even if it's a mistake, it's still written into our code essentially because we approved it.
Keep in mind, a comprehensive plan is just a policy statement. It's a guideline. The code that you have to follow, the law is the zoning ordinance. And it doesn't,
supersedes it.
In terms of what you have to do to comply with the law, yes.
Gotcha. Okay. So last thing, the wetlands are, like my colleagues, are the real concern here going forward. So I'm not going to be supporting this. We need to figure out what we're going to do with with that property and how we're going to preserve those wetlands. So that's my major concern, and I'll leave it like that and pass it back to you.
Yes, sir. And Mayor, if I could. I've had the pleasure of working in many communities in my many years as a planning consultant, and one of the many things that I truly appreciate about Elgin is the opportunity for the feedback, the rationale before that vote. Not only have I heard that, however, but the applicant has heard that, and the applicant would like to make a brief statement, if they could, which will have a direct bearing on the status of this application. Mr. Mayor,
let me finish first.
Please, absolutely,
okay,
sir.
Thank you. I'm usually last, and I sit here and I've listened to this, and I think the number of issues come up. I have a couple questions for staff and for the developer. The elevation D is I don't understand why they were never shown elevation D If that was an issue or an omission, okay. Okay. You know, I go back a long time on planning, 6 years on planning, and a long time on the city council. I've heard arguments like this a number of times. And the water issue here is especially interesting to me. I serve on the Kane County Stormwater Committee, have been on it for a long time. Part of the failure here is the failure of this Kane County Stormwater Ordinance. The water flows downhill, it doesn't flow uphill. So it's coming from your property. The comment was made that it pours out of the country club and flows down the hill. That's a failure. Water shouldn't be, it's not allowed to do that. You can't flood your neighbor's property. That's the way the stormwater ordinance is supposed to be written. This thing has grown because the impervious parts of the community have grown to feed down into that. I understand the issue about the French drain. We all talk a lot about drain tiles, and those things fail, so the water doesn't get carried away like it's supposed to. So the wetland issue here is something that's handled all the time, and we do that. Developers do that all the time. They compensate because they can't fix it. So they compensate, pay for it, and we will remediate someplace else. City does that. Cities do that all the time. The comment came up about cutting the trees before there was a permit. I look back at a property at the corner of Big Timber and Randall Road. Huge property. We went in, the developer came in, did a tree ordinance, went out and identified trees, cut the trees down. There's still no development there. So that happens all the time. Developments get built before the land gets cleared and developed before the developer gets in. It happens all the time. The water issue is something that may be addressed. I think that, I find it curious, and you talk about your vision, and you look down on these properties. You don't want to look at the rooftop. Would you rather look up? Would you rather look up at a 6-story building across there? Because that could be somebody that could bring that petition in. So I'm just saying that's the option. If you don't look down, you have to look up. And those are issues. I had a number of conversations with Jack Shales. Probably more than I don't want to go back and digress. Jack had ideas there. We talked about a veterans home that would have been 4 or 5 stories high. And the reason that it never got built or we never did it is because of the sewer issue that Mr. Shales talked about. We couldn't get the sewer put in. We had issues dealing with Target and through the back of the property there to provide that. So this property's been in discussion for a long time. I honestly don't think that you have an idea of what you would like to see there. I think you do have an idea what you'd like to see there, and it's nothing. And it's no development. There is no development that, do you have, I haven't heard that from you. Do you have a suggestion? That, because I'm sure Mr. Shales would like to hear it. and that would include a medical facility or an office facility, no matter if it's 2 or 3 stories tall. Yeah. Okay. Okay, I don't want to have a great discussion here, but I wanted to make sure I got that point out to you. I want to hear what you think you want to see there and what you want to see. Because if I'm going to vote in favor of this, right now my tendency was to, generally when I push the chaff out of the way, I end up coming back to the law. And the law would allow Mr. Shales to build on his property. He met the requirements that were proposed from the Planning Commission. There were 3 requirements. He looked at site characteristic and stormwater. That was a failure. And he has to meet the Kane County stormwater ordinance, period. Makes no exceptions. The conflict with the comprehensive plan and the parks was explained to me by Mr. Malat. That's an oversight, and I have to go back and look at that. That's a comprehensive plan. Is just a decision that the city council makes, and that we look at that as a guidance. And the conflict with the surrounding land use. Right next to this is a strip mall that's about a mile long. That's a land use as well. And so we have to look at all those kind of things. And once you get rid of the stuff that when you look at taking the trees down, and he has a right to go. He probably should have done that years ago and kept the property flat and put grass on it, in Dave Captain's opinion. But at this point, I think I'm going to offer a suggestion, and to try to move this thing off the snide here and get this done. I'd ask Mr. Shales to consider some other options here. And if a medical building is what they'd like to do, and they'd like to see that, then I would propose come back with an office building and a medical building. And that would be a proposal, and you have committed to that tonight. You've committed to be willing to look at doing that, even though it may be a site block to you. It may cause more traffic, and I guarantee you it's going to cause more traffic. You have a medical building or a medical office that's going to be operating 10, 12 hours a day. You are going to have more traffic. And that's going to be a given, because now that's exactly what you've asked for. And I agree with that. If that's what you want, I want to make sure that that's something that we can deal with. And I'll ask Mr. Shale.
Mr. Mayor, in light of the concerns that have been raised about stormwater runoff, wetlands, crime, and I think for the purposes of better illustrations, the petitioner would ask to withdraw the petition for this evening.
Okay. The petitioner will withdraw the petition, and I recommend to come back and take another look at this, and let's look at putting something there. If it's a hospital building or an office building, these conditions will be met, the stormwater conditions will be met, and that will allow this property to be developed. But again, if your choice is not to look at it, that's not an option here. That's, he has a right to develop his property and to do it legally. Mm-hmm. And I understand your concerns about the fact that the trees were cut down and now you see the headlights, but boy, that happens. And development happens. And I'll go back and digress one step further. I remember sitting through a planning commission meeting or early council meeting, and many of you same neighbors were at that meeting and objected to a development and a proposal that was nearby for many of the same issues: security, traffic, interfered, called loss of property value. That development was called Providence. And there's 1,100 homes out there, or 1,200 homes. So that's progress, and that's what we have to deal with. We'll try to do the best we can do. I hope that Mr. Shales work with staff, work with council, and try to come up with a compromise that will also fit your needs. So petition's been withdrawn.
Mr. Mayor?
No need for a vote.
Mr. Mayor, if I could add on to your suggestion really quickly, I would suggest that before you determine what you're going to build there, just from the beginning, have the conversations with the neighborhood and get a true feel for what they think is allowable. And I'm not saying that the young woman who spoke about the medical facility, that's not indicative of everyone here, but I think that you probably want to go back and have a conversation about what you all want and then bring that forward versus doing it here on the fly. So that would just be my suggestion. Have those conversations starting immediately, and good luck with that.
Okay. We've reached a conclusion. Thank you, everybody.
Do you need a motion to the table, or?
He's withdrawing, he's withdrawing the petition, so there is no motion to table. Okay. No. Okay, takes us to item 5. It's a resolution authorizing execution of a local public agency engineering services agreement with Engineering Enterprises Incorporated for professional engineering services in connection with 2022 Far West resurfacing project.
Move approval.
Second.
And moved and seconded for approval. Any discussion? Hearing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Dixon,
Yes.
Good,
Yes.
Martinez,
Yes.
Shaw,
Yes.
Steffen,
Yes.
Thorne,
Yes.
Mayor Captain.
Yes, motion's approved 7-0. Item 6 is a resolution authorizing execution of an agreement with the Service Employees International Union Local 73 Municipal Division Elgin Public Works Chapter.
Move for approval.
Second.
Moved and seconded for approval. Any discussion? Mr. Cogley's not here, but I congratulate Mr. Cogley on working with the Service Employees Union to reach a contract.
And similar kudos to the Service Employees Union
And
for
so
reaching
similar
contract as
for them
well.
to agreeing to it as well. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Dixon,
Yes.
Good,
Yes.
Martinez,
Yes.
Shaw,
Yes.
Steffen,
Yes.
Thorne,
Yes.
Mayor Captain.
Yes, motion's approved 7-0. Item 7 is an ordinance amending Chapter 6.06 of the Elgin Municipal Code 1976 as amended, entitled Alcoholic Liquor Dealers, to amend the number of certain available liquor license classifications.
Move for approval.
Second.
Moved and second for approval. Any discussion? Hearing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Dixon,
Yes.
Good,
Yes.
Martinez,
Yes.
Shaw,
Yes.
Steffen,
Yes.
Thorne,
Yes.
Mayor Captain.
Yes, motion's approved 7-0. Item 8 is an ordinance establishing a pay plan for the Public Services Employees Group of the City of Elgin.
Move for approval.
Second.
Moved and second for approval. Any discussion? Hearing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Dixon,
Yes.
Good,
Yes.
Martinez,
Yes.
Shaw,
Yes.
Steffen,
Yes.
Thorne,
Yes.
Mayor Captain.
Yes, motion's approved 7-0. Consent agenda.
Move approval.
Second.
It's been moved and second for approval. Any discussion? Ms. Martinez?
Yes. We got an email that came in kind of late today, and not everybody got to read it, but there's some concerns on item 16. And all I want to say is that, I don't know, maybe you can help me out, city manager, but even though we have agreed to a 3-year plan, that a 3-year agreement, that can be cut at any time if we find something different, or how does it? Help me out.
No problem, and I understand what you're referring to. Typically, purchase of service agreements that the city executes with third-party providers contains what we refer to as a termination for convenience clause. I'm looking down at Corporation Counsel back over there, and that generally allows the city, for whatever reason, to terminate agreement with 30 days' notice. And that's intended so if there's some budget shortfall or some unforeseen circumstance, the city has the ability to walk away, and that is included in this particular provision as well.
I'm just bringing it up because it was suggested that maybe we should just cut it down to 1 year, but rather than doing that, just bringing that to light, I think we should go ahead and everything's okay. Thank you.
Anything else? Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Dixon,
Yes.
Good,
Yes.
Martinez,
Yes.
Shaw,
Yes.
Steffen,
Yes.
Thorne,
Yes.
Mayor Captain.
Yes, motion's approved 7-0. Miscellaneous business.
Move approval.
Second.
Moved and second for approval. Any discussion? Hearing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Dixon,
Yes.
Good,
Yes.
Martinez,
Yes.
Shaw,
Yes.
Steffen,
Yes.
Thorne,
Yes.
Mayor Captain.
Yes, motion's approved 7-0. Catch up with myself here. The next Committee of the Whole meeting will be Wednesday, July 27th, 2022 at 6 p.m. in the City Council chambers. The next regular meeting of the Elgin City Council will be Wednesday, July 27th, 2022 at 7 p.m. in the City Council chambers. I'd entertain a motion to adjourn back to the Committee of the Whole.
So moved.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded to adjourn back to the Committee of the Whole. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Dixon?
Yes.
Good?
Yes.
Martinez?
Yes.
Shaw?
Yes.
Stefan?
Yes.
Thorne?
Yes.
Mayor Captain?
Yes, motion's approved. Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. I believe we are on item C. Item C and D are companion pieces, and Chief Financial Officer Deb Naraki previewed these initiatives as part of the budget. As she said, it's the advanced placement of an order to get in line in item C for the purchase of 3-wheeled coach ambulances from Fire Service, Inc. Just as a small matter of clarification, the coach builder that is building out the ambulance or the box component of the trucks is guaranteed the pricing, but we do not have guaranteed pricing for the chassis that will be provided by Ford.
Move approval.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded for approval. Any discussion? Ms. Martinez.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to thank Ms. Noraki and Chief Sagan and anybody involved for looking beyond right now and being smart and trying to do this now. Then, you know, even though we won't get these items until the future, but just to lock that in, that's going to save us a lot of money. So I would just like to thank them. Thank you, Mayor.
Mr. Good.
Thank you, Mayor. As I was going through this, I was looking at the line items and just became interested in all the equipment that's being added to these vehicles. And something that came to my mind was, what do we do, whether it's on the equipment or on our first responders, in terms of translation services? Is there any sort of development in how we are going to either build that into our hardware or build it into our capacities?
Mr. Manager, sure.
Mr. Mayor, I can have Chief Sagan come and address that concern, Councilmember Good. I know it's something that we've talked about. Oh, look at that. There he is.
Jumped right out of the floor.
It's an emergency.
I'm here. Well, good evening, everyone. Yes, so Councilman, I can answer your question. So let me tell you where we're at today and where we're going in the future here, in the very near future. So within the last year, we have put city-owned phones on every frontline apparatus. So all the ambulances, all the fire suppression vehicles have a city-owned phone now. We do that for a number of reasons. One, on the ambulances, so the guys can call the hospital. We often use cell phone technology rather than radios now to call the hospital, security reasons and things like that. And on all the vehicles, the phones now allow us to use it for fire inspections. So we're actually using iPhones to conduct fire inspections and do all our documentation that way. So we've come a long way in a short amount of time. The other thing that we are doing, and we're working with the police department currently has a subscription service for translation services. So it's an app on the phone that allows you to get a live person, tell them what language that you're looking for, and they will find a person who speaks that language, get them on the phone, and so it's a real live person that you're talking to. The other benefit of the program the police department have is that it also has a quasi FaceTime component, so that if you have someone with sign language who's deaf and you use sign language, you can communicate with them that way. So that's the system that we're working on getting online within the fire department, which I anticipate will be within the next few weeks. But with the development of an inception of putting those phones on all the rigs is changed all our needs. There's no technology that I'm aware of that we could even put into the ambulance that would allow for like instantaneous translation. But the reality is we wouldn't want to do anything that's fixed to that vehicle. The majority of work that we do with patients is outside of the vehicle. It's in the street, it's in the house, what have you. That's where we collect most of our information. By the time we get into the ambulance, in most cases, there's not as much necessary communication. So being able to use the cell phones, bring them into the house, bring them to wherever the patient is, and be able to utilize the service, that subscription service will be perfect for us.
I just want to applaud you for putting that all together. This was spurred by a conversation I had with one of your firefighters a few years back, and it was just, hey, this is something that we deal with while we're out there.
Yes.
So I'm happy to hear it's actually not being built into the vehicles. It makes a lot more sense and it's less cost intensive. So I appreciate this program being put together.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Any other questions?
Anything else?
I might get out of here before there are.
Okay.
Okay, I'll wait.
Okay. No other questions? Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Dixon?
Yes.
Good?
Yes.
Martinez?
Yes.
Shaw?
Yes.
Stefan?
Yes.
Thorne?
Yes.
Mayor Captain?
Yes, motion's approved 7-0.
All right, item D, the advanced purchase of a fire engine from Fire Services Incorporated. And if I'm not mistaken, Chief, this price is locked in with the exception of the value of the trade-in. Is that correct?
That is correct. And we won't know the value of the trade-in until we get closer down to it, just because of the time.
Don't get any action.
Move for approval.
Second.
It's been moved and second for approval. Any discussion? Hearing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Dixon?
Yes.
Good?
Yes.
Martinez?
Yes.
Shaw?
Yes.
Stefan?
Yes.
Thorne?
Yes.
Mayor Captain?
Yes, motion's approved 7-0.
Thank you for the night.
Item E is a Police Specialty Solutions covert surveillance vehicle purchase from the Village of Arlington Heights. The police department routinely conducts a variety of investigations utilizing a host of technologies and other investigative tools. During some of the more complex investigations, a variety of investigative techniques must be used, and that includes surveillance. The department is seeking to purchase a covert surveillance vehicle that will provide the ability to deploy a portable mobile platform that can be used in a variety of situations that will improve the department's current capabilities. For purpose of reference, if Elgin purchased a new vehicle with similar capabilities, the cost would be approximately $156,000. Purchasing this vehicle used and upfitting the technology brings the total cost to $32,380.
Move for approval.
Second.
It's been moved and second for approval. Any discussion? Mr. Stephan.
Well, somebody asked, so I'll ask it, 'cause I know Rick's addressed it, but I'll ask it publicly. What are we doing to make sure we're not buying a lemon, I guess is a quick way to ask the question. Since it's a used car, I mean, why are they selling this?
It's not even so much it's a used car. If we need more information, Mike Baird, the principal architect of this project, it's not so much the condition of the vehicle. Arlington Heights is purchasing a new vehicle.
Right.
They have the funding to do that. We went through, we examined the vehicle, identified the technology, also identified what could be new and replaced. The vehicle's condition is fine. It's just an update of the technology. And for our purposes, Mike is absolutely convinced that it will serve the police department's needs.
Perfect, thank you.
Anything else? Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Dixon?
Yes.
Good?
Yes.
Martinez?
Yes.
Shaw?
Yes.
Stefan?
Yes.
Thorne?
Yes.
Mayor Captain?
Yes, motion's approved 7-0.
Item F, this is what I've been waiting to introduce all night. The purchase of a Perkin-Elmer atomic absorption spectrometer. All right. No, it's not cold fusion
Well,
in the
you're right
water
in the wheelhouse
department. Exactly. This initiative will enable the city to begin conducting in-house testing for the presence of lead in water. The city had the capability of doing this a number of years ago with a 25-year-old piece of equipment, but following layoffs in 2007, a determination was made that conducting that testing with a third-party entity was the most cost-effective. With the new regulations requiring increased testing and a larger number of residences being subject to the testing, Eric Weiss and his staff have made the determination that it's more cost-effective to make this $76,000 purchase and also enable more eligible residents in the city to have their water tested.
Move approval.
Second.
Been moved and second for approval. Any discussion?
Just
Mr. Stephan.
in a similar vein, I don't know how I ended up with all these questions, but I did ask Eric to give me some, what it costs this year to outsource it in the next 5 years, and it started at $16,000 and went up every year from that. So we're clearly saving all that money by bringing this back in-house. So I appreciate it. Thanks.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Dixon?
Yes.
Good?
Yes.
Martinez?
Yes.
Shaw?
Yes.
Stefan?
Yes.
Thorne?
Yes.
Mayor Captain?
Yes, motion's approved 7-0.
Item G is the third amendment to the intergovernmental agreement with the Village of South Elgin for an interceptor sewer access. rather than creating parallel interceptor sewers between two municipalities. Elgin and South Elgin entered into an agreement in 1998 that allowed certain properties in South Elgin to use the existing downstream Elgin interceptor sewer. The intergovernmental agreement provides for a fee for making those connections. In this instance, Christ Community Church in unincorporated Caden County, which will become part of South Elgin, will be paying the requisite fee to connect to our interceptor sewer. That's $23,000 and some change.
Move for approval?
Second.
Moved and second for approval. Any discussion? Hearing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Dixon?
Yes.
Good?
Yes.
Martinez?
Yes.
Shaw?
Yes.
Stefan?
Yes.
Thorne?
Yes.
Mayor Captain?
Yeah, motion's approved 7-0.
Item H is the acceptance of the public improvements and the plat of easement for water main sidewalk and stormwater management purposes at 745 Tollgate Road.
Move approval.
Second?
Been moved and second for approval. Any discussion? Hearing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Dixon?
Yes.
Good?
Yes.
Martinez?
No.
Shaw?
Yes.
Stefan?
Yes.
Thorne?
Yes.
Mayor Captain?
Yes, motion's approved 6-1.
Item I is change order number 1 and final for the Wing Park Pool boiler replacement. In 2021, the 2 boilers at Wing Park Pool were replaced, and upgrades to the housing or the building that housed those furnaces included weatherproofing the building so that the boilers weren't subjected to freezing in the winter, and some electrical upgrades. That's what constitutes the $33,000 change order.
Move for approval?
Second.
Moved and second for approval. Any discussion? Hearing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Dixon?
Yes.
Good?
Yes.
Martinez?
Yes.
Shaw?
Yes.
Stefan?
Yes.
Thorne?
Yes.
Mayor Captain?
Yes, motion's approved 7-0.
Item J is change order number 1 for the 2021 lead service line replacement program. The bid for this program did not contemplate a item in the Illinois Plumbing Code that required an exploratory, that included, the installation of a drain valve between the meter and the outgoing shutoff valve of the meter. Missing that needed requirement is resulting in a change order in the amount of $31,000. This is a representative example of the work that Eric Weiss is doing in conjunction with our consultant EEI to try to find ways to minimize the costs of the lead service line replacements the city is going to be conducting certainly over the next 20 years.
Move for approval?
Second.
Moved and second for approval. Any discussion? Hearing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Dixon?
Yes.
Good?
Yes.
Martinez?
Yes.
Shaw?
Yes.
Stefan?
Yes.
Thorne?
Yes.
Mayor Captain?
Yes, the motion's approved 7-0. Announcements from the council. Ms. Martinez.
Thank you, Mayor. I have 2. One is last weekend we had such great weather, just perfect to welcome the spike ball to the Elgin area. Over 170 teams participated from 26 states and 3 countries. They all traveled to Elgin to compete for cash prizes in the first ever Spike Ball Challenger tournament at the Elgin Sports Complex. Congratulations to Elgin to Explore Elgin and the Parks and Recreation staff for working together to bring such a unique event to Elgin. Okay, and then second, I'd like to thank everybody that helped with the parade. It was obvious that many people were ready to come out and be together, and having the privilege to carry one of the flags and walk from point A to point B took me 45 minutes. But what I loved about it was seeing people knowing the etiquette of the flag, that when you see the flag coming, people stand and salute it. And this is the first time in a long time that I've seen more and more people do it. And so I'd like to thank the community of Elgin. I'd like to thank everybody that helped in this parade. Thank you.
Anything else? Mr. Good.
Thank you, Mayor. Just wanted to, make an official announcement from the dais that the Block Party in a Box is live. We are in Block Party season, so if you're looking to do that, I would say try to make your reservations sooner than later, because I'm told they're already filling up. So, yeah.
Mr. Dixon.
Yeah, I just have a question about the box. I want to know if Councilman Good jumps out of the box with it. Is that a part of the deal?
Pops up.
He pops up. That's a little
At
extra.
least a deposit.
He goes way up for that.
Announcements from staff.
No. The image of Councilmember Good jumping out of the box
That'll haunt
has
me
me
tonight.
stumped, yes.
Okay, entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
Been moved and second to adjourn. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Dixon?
Yes.
Good?
Yes.
Martinez?
Yes.
Shaw?
Yes.
Stefan?
No, yes.
Thorne?
Yes.
Mayor Captain?
Yes, we are adjourned. Have a good evening.
He was thinking about you jumping out the box.
You can't be serious.